Welcome to the March 5th public hearing and public meeting of the Landmarks Preservation Commission. We'll begin by taking attendance, and I'll ask our General Counsel, Mark Silverman, to call the roll.
Chair Carroll.
Here.
Vice Chair Bland. Here. Commissioner Chapin. Commissioner Chen.
Here.
Commissioner Chu. Here. Commissioner Ginsburg.
Here.
Commissioner Goldblum. Here. Commissioner Jefferson.
Here.
Commissioner Lutfi. Commissioner Master.
Here.
All right. Good morning again, and welcome to the Landmarks Preservation Commission's public hearing and public meeting of March 5th. This meeting is being held in our hearing room at 1 Center Street on the 9th floor. It is also being held via Zoom and live streamed on our YouTube channel if anyone would like to participate or watch it remotely. We have a full agenda today. We are going to start with a proposal by the Research Department for designation, and then we are going to move to a public meeting agenda for an application for work on a designated property that has already been here for a public hearing and earlier public meetings and has come back today with additional revisions in response to our comments at the last public meeting. And then we'll move to our public hearing agenda for to review new applications for work on designated properties. So with that, I will turn it over to Margaret Herman, Deputy Director of Research, to take us through our research item.
Good morning, Commissioners. The first item is LP 2677, the New York Public Library, Tremont Branch at 1866 Washington Avenue, Bronx, Block 2918, Lot 1. The item proposed for designation is a two-story neo-federal style library designed by Carrere and Hastings and built in 1905, and presenting is Sarah Eccles.
Okay, we can go to the next slide. Good morning, I'm Sarah Eccles from the Research Department presenting the Tremont Branch of the New York Public Library. The Tremont Branch was the 6th library of 67 circulating libraries constructed from steel magnate Andrew Carnegie's donation in 1901, which created the most extensive library system in the country. The Tremont Library was one of 14 Carnegie libraries designed by the prominent architecture firm Carrere and Hastings, and it has remained in remarkable condition. The Tremont Branch is the last undesignated Carnegie Library in the Bronx that is intact and still operating within the New York Public Library system. At the public hearing on January 23, 2024, a representative of the New York Public Library testified in support of the designation, as did the Historic Districts Council and the Bronx Borough Historian. The Commission received one additional letter of support from an individual. No testimony was received in opposition. Next slide. The Tremont Library is located in the East Tremont neighborhood of the Bronx at the corner of East 176th Street and Washington Avenue. Named in 1856, Tremont reflects the three hills or mounts in the area: Mount Eden, Mount Hope, and Fairmount. The village developed quickly, and by the early 19th century, Tremont had a growing population, a fire department, a post office, and a free circulating library. The cornerstone of the Tremont Branch was laid on January 21st, 1904, and it was complete in July of 1905. Carnegie libraries were opened in populated areas on busy streets where the reading rooms were strategically placed close to the sidewalk to draw people in. Community branch libraries like Tremont reflected Carrere and Hastings' stately, classically inspired aesthetic used to make libraries easily recognizable to the public. When the Tremont branch opened, the local Bronx Free Library closed and donated its 10,000 volumes to the branch, setting the library up for early success. Carrere and Hastings, one of the most prominent Beaux-Arts architecture firms in 20th century New York, designed the Central Branch in Manhattan. The firm was also part of the Architects Committee, which set the design standards for the branch library system. Carrere and Hastings designed 14 branch libraries, which fell into 3 general categories: mid-block libraries like the Muhlenberg Branch in Manhattan, small freestanding libraries like the Tottenville Branch on Staten Island, and libraries set on prominent corners like the Hunts Point Branch in the Bronx, where corner libraries were most common. The two-story building is a classical revival corner brick building designed by Carrere and Hastings, with a partial third story for the janitor's apartment. The building features a limestone trim with limestone keystones on the first floor in the arch windows, a projecting band course between the first and second floors, limestone enfranements on the second floor windows, a denticulated cornice, and parapet panels. Although designed with 5 bays, a 6th bay was added between 1915 and 1916. Due to the extension, what was originally a central entrance is now an asymmetrical entrance. The building also has a side entrance and a basement entrance on East 176th Street. In the early 20th century, Tremont was home to primarily European immigrants. As the century progressed, the population changed from Europeans to primarily Latino and Black families. The Tremont Branch held lectures and events to educate the public in a wide variety of subjects. The programs were largely informed by the demographics of Tremont and what the librarians saw as beneficial to the community, which evolved over time. Next. Librarians employed at the Tremont Branch, the vast majority of whom were women, kept extremely detailed documentation, including letters describing the importance of the library, their work with the public, changes to the neighborhood, and advocacy for programming, which give a unique insight into the evolution of Tremont. Over its lifetime, Tremont was home to many different ethnicities, which the branch consistently celebrated and uplifted. The Tremont Branch was one of the foremost branch libraries for books on Jewish culture and history in the 1940s. It was one of 8 libraries funded through the South Bronx Library Project to engage the Spanish-speaking community in the 1960s, and it hosted a Black Heritage Committee to highlight Black literature in the 1980s. Next. The exterior of the Tremont Branch remains remarkably intact, including its stone and ironwork. These images show the library's popularity both on its opening day in 1905, when the public lined up to enter the new space, and following a several-month-long interior renovation in the 1950s, when the public rushed in to use the space once again. In 2009, the Tremont Branch had an interior renovation, making it more accessible. Part of Carnegie's condition for his donation tasked the New York Public Library with the stewardship of the branch libraries, a task evidently carried out in the Tremont Branch. Next. The Tremont Branch Library is a distinguished example of a highly intact, well-preserved branch library constructed from the donation of Andrew Carnegie that created the most extensive library system in the United States. Along with the library's stately architecture by the firm of Prayer and Hastings is a community space that evolved in step with the Tremont neighborhood. The Research Department recommends that the Commission votes to designate the New York Public Library Tremont Branch as an individual landmark. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sarah. Commissioners, do we have any questions for Sarah or for Margaret on this one? All right. Any thoughts? Commissioner Goldblum, your borough? Yes, Kate is recused on this, as I will note, as that's correct. And I will also note that Vice Chair Bland is recused as well. Thank you. And this is the last of the fifth and the last intact active Carnegie Library in the Bronx. So we've covered the Bronx now. Other thoughts?
Just want to say that as an immigrant, my very first impression of New York City was in front of the New York Public Library on Fifth Avenue and 42nd. And I echo Michael's sentiment. I'm surprised that this has remained a landmark all this time.
I know.
It's about time.
Well, and I think that's a testament to the New York Public Library's stewardship of these Carnegie libraries. And I think they recognize their importance and have been incredible stewards of the buildings and, completely committed to the communities they serve. All right, other thoughts? Commissioner Chu?
I just think it's libraries as a typology in general. I think it's an interesting topic because they continually need to reinvent themselves. So I can imagine to protect these beautiful facades and exteriors, the interiors are going to keep changing,
Yeah, yeah,
and we have to be aware of that.
yeah. Although they've done an incredible restoration on the interior in this
Yeah,
particular
there's a
space.
lot of woodwork inside of this one too.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. But certainly changes for accessibility and
Will be needed, right?
modern library functions are going to
Really, as a
change.
community center, I think is what libraries have become. They're to
Exactly.
Support the communities that they serve.
Exactly. Yeah, and I think, as Michael said, this in and of itself is significant architecturally by virtue of its style, its integrity, its architects, Carrere and Hastings. But I think it is also really distinctive as typology and a distinctive style that Carnegie Branch libraries had, so that they were a recognizable symbol in a community of learning and opportunity for all. And I think, as I said, this really reflects not only the care for the architecture, but the care that the library has for the community it serves.
I think he left a legacy that's really incredible.
Yeah.
With 19th century stuff, but the legacy he left in the Bronx, particularly because these markers, I mean, if you walk through the Bronx and you see these markers and look at the map, it's just amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the sort of the idea of it as a symbol of opportunity to all is very much aligned with our sort of equity goals and our designations. And this again came out of our comprehensive survey of the Bronx and our commitment to recognize the rich history of the Bronx and all 5 boroughs. So I'm really delighted we're here today. So if there are no other thoughts, let's go ahead and make a motion. Commissioner Goldblum, would you make the motion?
Yes. Can you hear me? Testing? Hello? All right. Good. Hello? Is that better? Okay. All right. I move the Landmarks Preservation Commission designate the New York Public Library, Tremont Branch, at 1866 Washington Avenue, Borough of Bronx, as a New York City landmark because of its special character, its special historical and aesthetic interest and value as part of the development, heritage, and cultural characteristics of the city, state, and nation, as set forth in the designation report for LP 2677, dated March 5, 2024. I also move Borough of the Bronx tax map, block 2918, lot 1, be designated as its landmark site, as its landmark site, as described in the designation report and illustrated in the attached map.
And Commissioner Chen, would you second that motion?
Second.
Thank you. Mark, will you call the vote?
Chair Carroll,
Aye.
Commissioner Chen,
Aye.
Commissioner Chu,
Aye.
Commissioner Ginsburg,
He's recused as well.
Oh.
Sorry. He realized in the middle of it.
Commissioner Goldblum, Commissioner Jefferson,
Aye.
Commissioner Lutfi, Commissioner Master.
Aye.
With 8 in favor and none opposed, the motion passed.
All right. Yay. Thank you very much. Thank you, team, for all of your hard work. And yeah, and it's our latest New York City landmark, and I'm so delighted. Thank you. All right, we'll move to our Preservation Department agenda.
All right, good morning, everyone. We'll start today's Preservation Department agenda with public hearing item number 1, LPC 23-08657. This is an application for a certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Manhattan, Block 170, Lot 7501, 346 Broadway, aka 108 Leonard Street and 46 Lafayette Street, the former New York Life Insurance Building, individual and interior landmark. This is a neo-Italian Renaissance style monumental skyscraper with neo-Italian Renaissance style interiors, designed by Stephen D. Hatch and McKim, Mead and White, and built in 1894 to 98. The application is to alter designated interior spaces and install interior partitions, replace windows and doors, and install signage and lighting.
Hi, Edith.
Yes, the podium has control of the screen, so you just have to click on it to advance the slides.
Commissioners, Erin Woolley, Higgins Place Barth and Partners. We're here today presenting the new Jack Shainman Gallery at the New York Life Insurance Company building. Short people adjustment, yeah. The New York Life Insurance Company building at 346 Broadway. We're joined today by the full team. We have Jack Shainman and Carlos Vega. Sorry. Jack Shainman and Carlos Vega, who are the owners of the gallery, Jonathan Taylor, my colleague at HQ, Walter Biggs, who is the Director of Operations for the gallery, and Jose Luis Grifo Perez, who is the local architect, the architect of record for the project. We also have on Zoom our lighting designers at Flux Studio, and Gloria Vega, who's the design architect, and she's joining us remotely from Spain. So I think this is a very exciting project. It's for the adaptive reuse of the banking hall and executive offices for use as a art gallery. This is going to bring new life to the building, extend the Tribeca Arts District to the east, and bring unprecedented public access to these historic spaces. The scope of work before you today is the bulk of which is the sort of basic fundamental needs for the gallery to fit it out, programmatic and operational needs. This includes mechanical and basic systems. And then at the end, we're going to have a framework for future exhibitions and flexibility for the gallery going forward. The team has been at this for over 2 years, distilling the project down to its essential needs and really trying to solve for very complicated problems. It's been a labor of love for Jack and Carlos, and I think it's all evidence of the fact that we now have stewards for these incredible spaces after, I think, about 60 years. It's been owned by the city. It was owned previously by the city since the 1960s. You'll see what that resulted in. And so I think Jack is going to give a brief introduction, and then I'm going to take you through what is a very long presentation. I'll try to move very quickly, and then the whole team is available for discussion after.
Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for being here and hearing about our project. We're really thrilled to be here, and a little background.
You just need to click on the screen
Cetera.
slides.
Pardon me? I'm good? Okay. But that, to get to this point today, to be here talking to you guys, it's been like a 40-year journey. And I'm thrilled to be here. And, I guess I should tell you how it all happened. We were looking to expand and looking to find a really great space so that our artists' ambitions could be realized. I've worked with a lot of my artists for many decades, and it's all about giving them opportunities. And so when we found the space in Tribeca, Carlos and I were just blown away. We'd never seen anything like it. And although there's not one wall in the whole place to hang a painting on, et cetera, we were seduced, even in the state it was in. But, as Erin mentioned, it's been a 2.5 year to get us to this point. I can't say it wasn't frustrating, and I can't say we didn't walk away at one point, but the learning Carlos and I got from this experience is amazing, and we really understand it. And the Landmark staff, thank you, you guys have been amazing and, tireless. So we're here, and it takes a village. My whole people you met and many others that aren't here, but mostly this is like for the artists that I work with, but also for the public, because we really like people coming to our space. We're open 5 days a week, Tuesday through Saturday, 10 to 6, and we encourage people to come in. And so you know, to have this beautiful space and to be able to have it open, not only for the contemporary art, but if people aren't interested in that, they can come and see the architecture. We don't really care. But part of it is that it's an ever-changing, the space, because of all the problems. It'll be, as Aaron will show you, kind of an ever-changing thing. But, and last but not least, our values, Carlos and I, the gallery, the art world, our values are so aligned with landmarks preservation. And we understand the responsibility of taking this amazing historic space. Thank you, Stephen Decatur Hatch, McKim Mead and White for making that. And we also are in the business of like preserving objects and taking care of things. Although we're a contemporary gallery, we work with clients buying, selling, and holding, storing works from the 13th and 14th century, as well as others. So we understand about maintaining those things, caring for them. And, you know, we really believe in keeping this beautiful historic landmark available for future generations. But we want to enjoy it now. And I think juxtaposing contemporary art with this historic masterpiece is going to be really interesting, not only for the artists, for the way we look at art, for challenging notions of how contemporary art is seen. Anyways, that's all. I'm here for any questions you might have. And thank you so much for your time.
Jump into the presentation. I'm gonna get closer to the mic. Yep. Brought 2 bottles of water to get through this. Here we have the site. It is a full block building that occupies the block between Broadway, Lafayette, Catherine Lane, and Leonard Street. It is both an exterior and an interior landmark. It has a collection of interior designated spaces, some of which are on the upper floors. It's a very unique designation. And the city owned the building from the 1960s until 2013, when it was sold to a developer for residential conversion. Here is the area of the interior designated spaces that are now owned by the gallery. The gallery acquired the commercial condo earlier this year, and so that is the banking hall, the mezzanine above that's wraps around the perimeter of the banking hall, and then the executive office suite. And so the executive office suite under that earlier project had been converted to apartments. And so now, as part of the acquisition, the gallery is going to absorb those spaces and convert them back into public spaces. Here, just to give you a sense of the overall area of the gallery, yellow indicates the designated areas, blue is the undesignated area. So you can see we have a little portion of the retail frontage on Broadway, and that's undesignated. And then, of course, the banking hall. The gallery will be entered from Lafayette Street. You can see right here is the main entry into a commercial lobby, double height space that you go up the stair and into the banking hall which is at the first floor, and we enter at ground level. And so when the 2013 project happened, the stair that previously serviced the executive offices was relocated. It's a marble stair. It came out into the banking hall, and that central core was converted for the residential core. So the elevators and egress within that space are for the building. So there is no direct connection currently between the gallery spaces and the executive office spaces. So 2 of the big challenges here are solving for the circulation issues as well as the mechanical and just basic systems. And you can see that in the second floor plan, where you see the not in contract area, because that's building access. The owners can go through it, but not the public. Okay. On the exterior, what this looks like for us is, this is Lafayette Street. This will be the Lafayette Street entry, the main gallery entrance. Those designated spaces are up here on what it reads as the third floor on Lafayette, but it's really the second. And then we have frontage along Catherine going down along the banking hall, a detail of that view of the existing entry, and then frontage along Leonard Street. This is the banking hall back here, executive offices, and then undesignated space at that first floor level. I'm sorry, the cursor's a little jumpy. And so just to give you a sense of how the building is oriented, there are essentially three primary facades. Even though this is a building in the round, Lafayette, Broadway, and Leonard are all marble-faced facades with an extensive decorative package. On Catherine Lane, it is brick, buff brick, slightly less ornamental. This is where loading, freight, louvers, all of that sort of occurs on the Catherine Lane side of the building. Broadway, here is the Broadway frontage. We have one bay on Broadway, an entry, and then 3 window bays along Catherine Lane. This will be a program space, so exhibit space. And really the thinking here is that there's so much more pedestrian traffic along Broadway that this is almost like a teaser gallery to try to get people to come down to Lafayette, hopefully maybe activating Catherine Lane along the way. So the building was constructed between 1894 and 1898, started under Stephen Hatch, who passed away in 1897, took over by McKim, Mead and White. This banking hall is purely McKim, Mead and White in terms of its design. And so what we're seeing here is the public passageway through the space. It's a stone runner that ran through from east to west across the space, and then teller partitions, walls were along the perimeter that separated the office space, the working area of the banking hall from the public passageway. And so we see a combination of open and closed partitions, desks and storage within the space. The vault is to our right. This is the original condition of the vault there. And in the distance, 2 Oculus windows, which we'll see as we go through the presentation. By 1915, we start to see changes in terms of how the office space is organized. Changes in desk arrangements. The teller cages have relocated. Partitions that had previously separated the back space has been removed. So there's this constant evolution. This is largely a symbolic space meant to evoke the integrity and permanence of the institution, but it still had to function as an office space. So it's sort of 2 competing interests, I think, even from the very beginning of its history. The most significant alteration to the banking hall was the introduction of a mezzanine around the perimeter of the space. I'm sorry we don't have any photos in between 1980s and 1915, but here is a good view of the mezzanine. It runs along the perimeter. It's supported by the marble columns. Those were reinforced by cast iron backup that's been marble clad on the marble columns at the east and west ends. We have cast iron columns, and it has a cast iron fascia that runs around the perimeter. And you'll see the vault is to the left here. The vault crown was altered to accommodate the new mezzanine. So you actually stand on the top of the vault when you're on the mezzanine. And so we have that new railing at that point, and the fascia that runs across the top, replacing the original crowning elements of the vault. The New York Life, this was installed in the early 1920s. New York Life moves uptown in 1928. Veterans Administration moves in, and then the city buys it in 1967. This is the condition when the city occupied the space. This was the summons court, I believe, that was using the space here. So you can see that the teller partitions have been removed. New contemporary partitions are added. Everything is painted. There are extensive system of dropped fixtures within the space. Up at the mezzanine, lots of storage, and you can see all of the sprinklers and attachments to the coffered ceiling. And then also just meeting and desk areas along this is the top of the vault again. These are designation photos. And so this is what the commission designated. And I think it really speaks to the vision of the commission playing the long game in terms of understanding what could happen in the context of this space. Here's what we have today. So the property sold in 2013, and at that time, LPC approved a comprehensive project for conversion of the building to residential. As I mentioned, there are a combination of interior designated spaces. Some of those public designated spaces, interior spaces, since when they were in city ownership. I mean, the city ownership is what allowed for this extensive designation of interior spaces at that time because they were considered public. So part of that application privatized some of the interior spaces. And the result of one of those privatizations is the apartments in the executive office, but this marble stair was relocated from the adjacent space that had previously been located within the apartment, the executive office suite, and was brought out into the banking hall. Just as a bit of context, this space was on the market for 7 years. And in that time, there were approximately 6 serious buyers or tenant or lessees for the space, contemplating a variety of uses. They did need to meet the public access requirements for the space, but some of the proposals were for event spaces, which we see always, event spaces, private clubs, or combination of private club and event space, co-working spaces. An architecture firm considered putting their office here. There were challenges, of course, with the public access in that condition, high-end restaurant. And so there were a variety of potential uses. LPC staff met with several of those potential buyers to evaluate the viability of their projects. Ultimately, none of those panned out. The gallery is a superb use of this space, not just for the grandeur of the space, the height, and the ability to show art here, but also the dialogue between the two, the context for creating art. And so that's what we're going to be looking at today. Another view looking in the other direction. So basically, the developer restored the volume of the banking hall, and it was in anticipation of an adaptive reuse. So there was no program dictated as part of the restoration, and there are no systems integrated. So there's no heating or cooling and no lighting. There is sprinklers. Here, just to give you a sense of that change in the executive offices. On the left is the historic plan for the offices. You can see the stair right there. At the time of the project in 2014, the center view is what the plan looked like. And then on the right is our existing plan today. So we have the core, the egress stairs and elevators here. We've closed up the connection between the mezzanine and the executive offices. And then this is now 2 apartments. So you enter through this corridor and you can go to the north apartment here or the south apartment. And historically, as you can see in the plan, these easternmost rooms were a line of very decorative formal spaces, fireplaces, built-in cabinets, this very elegant paneled niche that we'll take a look at. So that the 2014 project fundamentally changed to that. And 2 of the goals here are to reestablish some of those original spatial experiences, the connectivity between those easternmost rooms, and also make them public. Here are just a few views of those spaces. This is the committee room, that central room where the corridor now is. Pre-work conditions, and this is the existing condition. And so all of this is new fabric, except, we're looking towards the arch in this view, but where these doors are, these walls are all new construction. A few more views, pre-work, and this is post-work. So this is in one of the eastern rooms. It really looks quite lovely. Historic door surrounds were retained in these spaces, the original ceiling height. And then you can also see the modern intervention where there's an existing kitchen that was added within that space. So, just a little bit about the thinking in terms of the project context. In trying to determine how to best fit a contemporary art program within the space, the team looked at examples across the world on trying to understand modern insertions into historic envelopes. And so here we see a few examples of these grand historic spaces and how small scale construction and display areas can be integrated within that architectural system. We looked at other interior landmarks and previous commission approvals. Two adaptive reuse projects, the Emigrant Savings on the left, which is a fairly recent approval by the commission, and then the 7th Regiment Armory on the top, a large-scale installation there. And then, interestingly, the rotunda at the Guggenheim. So this is a purpose-built building, not an adaptive reuse, but this is James Turrell's installation in the rotunda. This was suspended from the dome, and you viewed it from below, and you looked up, and it's one of James Turrell's iconic light installations that interprets the rotunda, Wright's Rotunda. And I think it really speaks to the site-specific, it was a site-specific installation. It speaks to the site-specific nature of what is possible here. It's not just about being able to hang art, it's about the place inspiring something and bringing something forth that comes from the building itself. And then, of course, coming back to the building itself, between 1973 and 2013, the clock tower for the building was the home to the clock tower project. This started out as the, I'll get the name wrong, wait, Institute for Art and Urban Resources. It eventually becomes PS1. But it was a program that started by Alana Heiss as a project of MAS, and to revitalize underutilized urban spaces for art use. So exhibition rooms, studio spaces, and that functioned at the building for an extensive period of time, and in 2013 that was lost. But here you see Gordon Matta Clark suspending from the clock at 108 Leonard. So there's some symmetry in bringing art back to the building. So here's our proposal. We have the existing condition. As we move through this, we're going to look at things on all 4 elevations and within the banking hall, because that's where the bulk of the interventions will exist. Here is the overall proposal. And so I think what you can see here is a limited system of carefully detailed modern interventions. The vast majority are reversible. They all are carefully detailed to defer to the historic architecture and draw on that long history of the evolving uses within the space. And I think all with the goal of creating a beautiful and focused environment for the viewing of art. So we're going to start with the banking hall. Here is the existing plan, the main floor and then the mezzanine above. The interior of the vault is not designated. It's the only area in the room that's not designated. And we can see, just for orientation, this is that relocated marble stair. We see here it connects to the mezzanine. And you'll notice along the south side of the wall, so this is Catherine Lane, the sort of back of the building. We have 3 windows that have been obstructed with louvers and have been sheetrocked over. And that is in the existing condition, so approved under that 2014 project. That helped direct some of our choices in terms of partitioning and configuration of spaces. And so here's the overall proposal. We'll look at each area in detail, but you'll see that the enclosed space is mainly consolidated on that south side of the room, where the windows are already blocked, and that is to allow for this room to be open otherwise and not have other partitions around. But also, it also allows us to connect to the louvers to bring mechanical into the space. All of the mechanical will be coming from the outside of the designated area, except for a few units that'll be in the ceilings of spaces over here. We'll also take a look at different partitioning systems, some enlarged openings within the west wall to allow for art movement, and some enclosures on the top along the mezzanine. This is primarily a workspace for gallery directors and their assistants here. We have workstations, and very important to the gallery, two of the biggest sort of programmatic needs are the gallery viewing area here, where art can be shown and meetings can be held with clients, and then a connection to address those circulation issues to the executive offices. We'll start with the north wall. Here we have always in the layout of this presentation, it's sort of masterfully done by the IQ architecture, the existing on the top, proposed on the bottom, and then matching renderings that show you existing and proposed. So here, just installation of shades along the under the mezzanine, new workstations along at the top of the mezzanine in each of the windows, along with some fan coil units. This is the mechanical system for the mezzanine itself. There are 3 units on the north, 3 units on the south, and then some light fixtures, pendants over the desks. Here is the shade pocket. You can see here, we're going to talk about this a little later, but it requires a little bit of relocation of some existing plaster work, but we'll talk about that sort of in a holistic way. The windows will have film, translucent vinyl film on the interior. It is removable. This is really to focus the attention on the interior of the room and sort of quiet the exterior noise. And the benefit of film, rather than having shades drawn all the time, is that it actually allows the window to read. So you're going to get the meeting rail and the framing of the window, whereas a shade would just cover it all the time. The film really will provide UV protection, and then when needed, shades can be deployed for light control. The desks up on the mezzanine. So the mezzanine floor is concrete. It's been trenched for the existing systems for the sprinkler system. And so that is going to be how we bring the systems into the space as well. The mechanical will be outside of the designated areas, and then the floor will be trenched, bringing heating, cooling lines, and electrical. And then it'll be delivered to each of the locations. So no exposed conduit, everything will have a direct connection. As you can see in this rendering, the proposal is the desks are custom designed, glazed tops with very light steel legs. Everything is attached at the floor and not to the marble. And then the light fixture above is a felt pendant. And this has some acoustic ability so that it muffles conversations within it, can absorb the sound coming from each of the desks within the workstations. And in the plan, you can see we have 6 of those along, 1 in each bay. Fan coil units, this is what is going to heat and cool the mezzanine, and these are tucked along at the pier line here. We see the proposed condition, finish to match, or its finish will blend with the background of the marble, and be very slim in profile, limited projection into the space. East wall. Here we have a couple of entries that are being enlarged. We'll take a look at them in detail. Some glazed office structures on the mezzanine level, and then a new door and display wall at the south end of the space. North end of the space. Existing is on the top in the rendering, and the proposed on the bottom. This is the door. We can see it on the bottom right. This is the door that connects to the main lobby for the gallery, and the existing condition is a marble surround that has wood infill within it. That wood infill is fairly recent. It is, I think, intended to replicate what was there historically. And so the proposal is to just remove that wood infill and then have the simple marble opening. And that allows for the movement of large-scale objects, artwork through the doorway. At the right, we have a rendering of this is the relocated marble stair. On the top, you can see it has a black rear railing. That's all new fabric. That stair was previously embedded in a marble wall, so it didn't have a return railing on the back. And so the proposal there is just to paint it white so that the bronze railing will pop against the backdrop of the marble and the new railing. Another door, similar condition toward the north side. Here, removing that non-historic infill, but infilling it with a flat panel door, again, of a large scale to move objects. And that'll be set back about 3 inches behind the marble, the face of the marble, to give a nice shadow line, wrapping the opening. But again, this is all, there's a vocabulary established in terms of the simplicity of the insertions. Everything is very simple, white partitions and doors for the most part, and then all with very sort of carefully conceived details that we'll look at in more detail when we start to see the partitions. But these are all concealed hinges, so it's just going to read as a flat panel. Again, bringing the mechanical system into the space, there is a return and a supply proposed in this marble wall here. The supply will be at the closer to the ceiling. The return will be located down at the bottom. You can see that this stone is slightly grayer, so that's new stone that was part of the restoration of the space. And so the larger return will be mounted into that, or connected through that stone. And then around that will be a new display wall. This just sort of gives you a level surface because we have so much planar change within that area. And the wall is designed, and this will be the case for everything that we see today. The wall has a reveal at the bottom. We're also going to be able to provide return through that wall. And it aligns with the sill of the window. So it has this floating detail where it's not just sitting atop the floor. It has a shadow line that will allow it to read as though another of the floating planes in conjunction with the marble that we see it juxtaposed against. And similarly, the supply will come over that wall. Up on the mezzanine, there are a series of 4 of these office enclosures proposed. We call them the office pergolas. They are a metal frame, metal on the sides and a metal top rail, glazed front. There's no back. It abuts the marble in the, it goes through to the marble in the back. It's just pressure fit against the wall. And the ceiling is louvered. And so it can share in the climate of the room. It doesn't need separate mechanicals. And then it can close down. The louvers can close for privacy when needed. It's also going to have smart glass. So if there's a need for privacy, it will obscure. You can obscure it, but in general, it will stay transparent. And you can see in the elevation that the top rail aligns with the bottom of the capitol. So again, being able to see through this space into to the architecture beyond. Another one of those, this is a smaller unit, a little bit to the south. And then this is a new proposed door location. So this is one of the critical aspects of the project, creating a connection between the banking hall and the executive offices. So here, what's proposed is to remove try to make the cursor stay, remove the marble infill within the larger arch and salvage everything. So this will all be salvaged. Jack has already dedicated a space in the basement for salvage and storage of any materials that are removed. So this would all be removed, and new sheetrock and wood infill to replicate all of the details would be installed, be faux finished. And then they have the ability to do a lightweight door. The oculus you can see here, because the walls in the apartments, the current apartments are protected. They have all sheetrock covering historic details. That's what you're seeing in this existing photo. So you're not seeing through the oculus anymore. It's sheetrock. And so the proposal would create a new door, reestablish the oculus as a transparent view through to the executive offices. And similarly, on the back side, this is the front of the oculus on the on the executive office side, this has all been encapsulated. So none of this is visible in the current condition, but that would all be maintained in the design of the new door. This is a similar strategy to what was a part of what was approved in 2014, which at the vault at that time, the proposal included removing the vault doors and replicating them in new lightweight material. They are extremely heavy. They're immovable, actually. And so by using that approach here, it allows for this direct connection, which doesn't exist. You can't even get from the first floor spaces outside the designated space up to this. So you really have no means of connection to the executive offices aside from this new proposed opening. On the south elevation, similar components that we've been talking about. Most importantly here is this enclosure space, the gallery viewing room that sits atop the vault. And so we'll look at that in more detail, but existing on the top, proposed on the bottom. There will be a reception desk. So as you enter from Lafayette Street, you'll walk through the doors into the banking hall. On your left will be a reception desk. This is simple cabinetry on wheels. The only connection will be data and electrical lines that will be in the strip wood flooring that exists there today. And then start to talk about a little bit about the enclosure on the vault. So this will be a convening area for clients and the gallery to show art. It needs to have a certain scale to the room in order to bring art into the space. And so the design proposal sets back, and here we are looking from the west. This vault door remains exposed as part of that. The wall is set back about a little, I think it's a little more than a foot from the face of the vault. And so you're reading that historic massing of the vault. It doesn't interrupt the reading. But in order to accommodate the new walls, the railing at the top of the mezzanine for this area would need to be removed. That would also be, that's proposed to be salvaged in the same location as the marble. Those are the only two removals that we're proposing. And that is really required in order to create circulation within the space. If we were to retain the railing at the top of the vault, the wall would come in much closer. We have these two large columns within the space, but also what most of these partitions do within the space, they're sort of a dual function. They compartmentalize space, but they also provide display area. And so it's very important to have that clear white face to display, not just to be able to hang something on, but to display something against. Otherwise, you get this layered reading that it is very challenging from an exhibition perspective. And so dealing with that, but also this idea that the vault has changed over time. The introduction of the mezzanine instituted a different condition at the crown of the vault. This is another in those steps to the use of the top of the vault. And I think that ultimately it's reversible because all the materials will be salvaged. The east face of the vault. So here on the proposed rendering, you can see this is the reception desk. You'll walk here, and so here is a display wall. So this is sort of the entry view when you enter the gallery. You would see this sort of to your left, and then the experience of the whole space, the whole sequence of spaces around the banking hall in this view. And so this creates the east wall of this display wall in conjunction with the partitions on the roof of the vault create that enclosure system. And we see to the right of it, the pilaster. There's a marble pilaster here. So we've left that exposed, pulled the wall back slightly so that you get the return of the vault, and it extends around, and again, reading the original massing. Now, as I mentioned, the doors had previously been approved to be removed and replicated. They are going to be retained in this. They'll just be protected behind the proposed enclosure. The partitions that engage at the columns, nothing is engaged at the marble here. They are attached at the floor and at the plaster ceiling, and then they'll cantilever over to the columns and be scribed to meet the columns. So we really sort of this surgical approach to inserting the wall adjacent to the columns. Up the mezzanine, we're in the viewing room to be able to open and close that space, have the flexibility to open and close it. Sliding doors are proposed. We see it in the open position here. And it attaches at the mullion in the window that we see up here, the arched window. These are all on Catherine Lane again. And so it's sort of the back of the building. And you can see here, it has a standoff. So it's not the full width of the wall that's engaging at the mullion. It has the standoff, and then the thickness of the wall extends after it clears the window. More fan coil units, following all those same rules that we established on the north side. And here, in the easternmost bay of the mezzanine, we have the proposed exhibit niche. And so this would be a new partition installed within the opening with the window opening. It'll fit between the window and the ornamental arch. So sit between the marble and metal enclosure and the window beyond. And on the right, we can see how we would experience that. This is Catherine Lane. We're looking up at the window, and it's this window here that is above the louver, and we don't think that there'll be any real visible impact in terms of the location of that partition blocking the window. The west elevation, another collection of office enclosures, partitions similar to what we've been looking at. Existing is on the top and proposed rendering on the bottom. We'll start with this floating exhibit wall. So this is attached only at the floor. We can see that in this plan, into non-historic concrete. There's at the edges of the stone runner through the space, there are 2 strips of concrete. So that's where we would be anchoring this. Another of those careful details, it has the reveal at the bottom. This one will be lit. So it's going to have a sort of floating effect in the middle of the space. And because it doesn't engage, it does not engage around the columns, you're able to sort of see all the way around it. It really is going to be a floating plane within the space. One of the essential needs for the gallery is to have a scissor lift. We have very high ceilings. And so in order to house the scissor lift, there's a proposal to create a storage bay for that under this stair. Prior to the recent project, there was a bathroom located in this spot. It had a concrete floor, so all the flooring here dates to the new project, so it's all new flooring. So proposals to house the scissor lift here and then have a full height display wall that would create that enclosure here, again, following the same philosophy of attachment at the wood and at the plaster above. Similar strategy, there's a library in this corner, and it'll also be bringing mechanical from mechanical will be coming through the crown of the wall. We can see the detail here where it's a recessed diffuser. And so the ceiling, the front plane of the wall will look like it's floating. It will have a shadow line at the top so that it doesn't engage directly with the ceiling above. And here, I think you can get the sense of how those partitions become both the enclosure for the room and the display area and backdrop for the viewing of art. Doors. These doors lead you to the Leonard Street lobby, also a designated space. All of the infill there's a historic marble surround. All of the infill within the panel now is sheetrock, and these are fire-rated metal doors. And so the proposal here is to just remove all of the non-historic fabric and do really large fire-rated doors here, again, for the movement of art. The design would be the same for both sides, so because it will be fronting onto the designated lobby on the other side. To the north here, we have the small door here, and it leads to non-designated space. This is leads to the break room. And here we've taken a different approach. This is a frosted glass door. So picking up on the materiality and the aesthetic of the film in the windows and the smart glass that we see in the office pergolas. But this opening is slightly different than the other openings in the space because it's not trimmed. It's a very clean marble opening with no surround. And so we thought that a different treatment here might work. It's also the break room. So there needs to be, for safety purposes, there needs to have some amount of visibility when knowing that people are coming and going. And so on the south mezzanine, we have two more of those office pergolas. It's a connected unit here. Oh, and then to the ceiling. Here is the existing ceiling. It was in really poor condition prior to the start of the project. Parts had collapsed, and so this is a really grand piece of the overall restoration. So octagonal coffers that are framed by this a rectilinear grid or inserted within this rectilinear grid. Again, there's no lighting in the existing condition. And so here's the proposal for the lighting system. It's really twofold. There's the ambient light, the house lights to provide overall illumination all of the time. And then there's the exhibit focused lighting. And so the red lines that you see are surface mounted track lights, and that is for exhibit. So that's really just delivering the ability to light the space. It's powering along the strip and then gives the gallery the ability to install light fixtures as they need them and focus and provide directionality. The green are surface mounted linear fixtures, and those are the house lights, the ambient lighting, as well as pendants within each of the coffers. And everything will be finished to match the surrounding architecture. We see that here in the proposed scheme. And again, these are just really placeholders in terms of what the location and attachments for the track lighting would be. And an overall rendering so that you can see that in context. In order to provide flexibility going forward for the gallery in terms of installing artwork and exhibit walls, temporary exhibit walls, they have devised a system of anchors. This will happen at the ceiling and at the floor. And so we have all of these anchor points. They'll be going into a section of the decorative plaster that we'll look at closely. And they allow for connections. There'll be permanent connections to the girders above, and then they allow for structural members to be stretched between the points, the anchor points, and provide for hanging, stabilizing, or supporting walls within the space. This is the location of where the rods will be, the anchors will be attached. And this is dictated by the location of the girders above. And so this is all decorative plaster. As I said, the ceiling had been restored. As part of this, we can document the condition and easily repair plaster through this process. And then this gives you a sense of the connection in the section and how the structural members could tie. There are 2, 3, and 4, depending upon the location, 2, 3, or 4 anchors that allow for these flexible configurations of the structural system. Under the mezzanine, when I mentioned the shades and the need to realign the existing plaster panel. So this is looking at that in more detail. The existing panels extend all the way to the window. To accommodate the new shades and some of the partitions, we're proposing to realign the ceiling moldings. As you can see, it still maintains a true reading of the panels. They feel complete, and it is all in plaster, which is easily repairable, and most of which is new from the 2014 project. here, these are just detailed photos of the conditions, but I think the most relevant one is number 3, because this is where one of the louvers, this is on Catherine Lane, where a louver's been installed and there's sheetrock in front of it, and this sheetrock has just gone up and intersected the panel, and that's what we're trying to avoid. So having a more complete reading by just relocating the moldings, and they range from between 6 and 8 inches depending upon the location. But all of the locations along the north side will have a very regular dimension. It doesn't vary between those installations. There'll also be some lighting under there, all linear, a combination of linear suspended, linear fixed, and track lighting. The track lighting, again, is used for, that's mostly on the this west elevation, and that's primarily for lighting of artwork. Here we see those in rendered view, there's just those very minimal suspended linear lights. And on the right, this view shows you the track lighting installed in the flat plaster. So everything will be attached at flat plaster. Banging hall floor. So here, this is the system of attachments that I mentioned in the ceiling. We have a similar system on the floor. You see this in museums and galleries all the time. It's basically an access panel. It'll have a wood finish that matches the surrounding floor and just have a stainless steel trim. And there'll be anchors that attach to the girders below the floor deck. And then the proposal is to stain the existing floor. As you remember from those historic photos, we have that very special marble runner through the space. And then the wood floor is fairly utilitarian. It's a strip oak floor. And the intent here is just for a white grayish finish to have a more neutral condition for the viewing of art, so that things aren't competing with the warmth of the floor in that space. And again, that can be easily sanded and refinished if that were to change. On the mezzanine, the flooring proposal here is a linoleum, a monolithic flooring system, and it would be seamless. It has fused seams, so it really continuous flooring surface, has a softness to it, also has really good acoustic properties so that it absorbs some of the sound coming from the main level. And this would not be visible from the main floor. And this is a slightly less public space. I mean, it'll be less trafficked than the lower floor will be. The blue was selected as a complementary color to the golds and bronzes of the ceiling finish, and really just an opportunity to insert a little color into the proposal. Executive offices. So we've seen this plan before. On the left is the existing plan. Everything in yellow are the historic walls. Everything in gray are the walls constructed as part of the 2014 project. On the right, you can see the proposal. So reinstating, this is the committee room, reinstating the full spatial experience of that room. There is mechanical already incorporated into these spaces that the gallery will be retaining. It's actually very important because these are much better climate controlled spaces than the banking hall is. They can control this much better. And so the existing mechanical will remain. It's embedded in this wall. So they will just maintain an enclosure at that location. But again, reinstating all of this, and you get that reading across the full east end of the building. Where we're proposing that new Oculus door, this connects here, removing all of those partitions. This is a kitchen, a bathroom, and I think a bedroom. All of that will go away, reinstate the full reading, again, spatially of that room, and new protective walls. And so the protective walls will be a little different than what is installed today. They're going to come out and to the window trim, including the window trim. And the proposal also includes continuing the wall across this window. This is set back about 4 feet from the window itself. It's a very deep return. The goal here is to create just a larger surface for the display of art on that wall. We have 2 very small walls, and this joins them and creates a continuous span for an installation in that location. Just some photographs of the existing condition. I think the most relevant are number 2. Number 2 is looking into, the space where we're reconfiguring it, this space here, the southwest. And so this will be a wall. Now it's pinched in the corridor. It's going to become a full wall when we reinstate that space. And then to the right of that, we see the corridor, what we saw in the beginning of the presentation with all that non-historic construction located there. And on the bottom left, number 5, all the flooring here is concrete. There are some leveling issues and height issues that they're working within, and that requires a sort of thin flooring surface. So the proposal is for a buff colored tile throughout the space. We see that here on the bottom. And then in elevation, looking at the reinstated wall that'll be throughout the gallery. So the north space, the committee room, and then the south space here. And then on the bottom, looking back at the full width of the wall with the historic door surrounds within the wall and the surrounding open space. Here detailed just to show you how that the room with the Oculus door, the southwest room, will be detailed. The panel within the window opening, the return will remain, and then the protective walls will surround everything else. This elevation here gives you a sense of the benefit of enclosing that partition along the window, because it widens the span between the two windows, between the wall and the other window. RCP, this is a proposal for some track lighting. Some of it is suspended lighting. Some of it is embedded in the flat plaster, so recessed tracks, but all very understated and focused on the architecture itself. Rendered view. The finishes in here will be will be white. The existing finishes are not based on paint analysis, but the walls will have a flat finish, and all of the trim will have a pearl finish. So there's going to be some contrast so that the wood trim and the detail pops against the wall. And we can see the light fixtures in this location as well, and the floor. Moving to the exterior, we're so close. Lafayette Street, here's our view. We're looking down, looking north along Lafayette on the left, our view along Catherine Lane here. And then this is also Catherine Lane, showing you some of the louvers. This is actually the back of the vault, this bricked-in opening. And then along Leonard Street, this is the banking hall here as we see the space. This just gives you a sense of the area of the elevation controlled by the gallery. Blue outline is the area of their control. The pink outline indicates those areas that are also the subject to interior designation. So this second floor is the executive offices. This is the banking hall here. Okay. So I think, this is mostly interior, but it has an exterior effect. The intent is to have linear light fixtures in each of the sills of the windows on the interior. They will uplight each window. And then there is a combination of shades, film, and partitions that are required for the gallery. But the overall effect is one that will be uniform across the building. And again, we're talking, is a very large building. So this is indicating the various combinations of things. In all cases, the film and the light are what control the condition at the exterior, and then the shade is beyond that, or the partition is beyond that. So you would have continuity across the facade. Everything that is identified as E is one of the windows that would have a partition that extends along the interior face of the window. There are 9 of them in total, and they're all set back pretty substantially because they're in the plane of the interior wall because it's continuous display area. So some are at 2 feet and some are at 4 feet. So the minimum is something like 18 inches from the window, except for the sculpture niche here, which is a slightly different condition. Sections showing you how that all works. And then the entries and a window. So just looking at On Catherine Lane, there is one window. These are simulated divided lights, simulated double hung windows with operable casements at the bottom, all new from the 2014 project. Here, the need is to make them fully operable in order to load art through the window. And so we have, we're matching everything about the window. It's just turning it into a full casement operation. And also just to note, this is flanked by two louvers, so it is in isolation, and there won't be any contrast with the surrounding windows. The entry, so there is an entry on Broadway, entry on Lafayette. Here we see the Broadway entrance. The existing infill dates to the 2014 project. On the top right, we see the overall Broadway facade in context. This entry was originally a window, which we can see in the historic photo here. So, and that's the case on Lafayette Street too. So in these locations, what we're proposing is something closer to the glazing area and fineness of the historic windows. The windows on the ground floor of this building are spectacularly large plate glass windows historically. And so the proposal is for a very simple contemporary door, fully glazed, just framed, picking up on some of the proportions and scale that we see in the window at the north end of the building. This door is going to have an operable transom and and lower section of the door. It'll operate sort of like a Dutch door so that they can load large scale objects through the space. We have that same condition on Lafayette Street. Again, historically, this was a window. And so picking up on that rhythm of windows and the treatment of windows within the elevation on Lafayette, and that new contemporary design, same design that we have on Broadway, but still very consistent with the design of the adjacent windows. Here, again, this operates the same way that the door on Broadway would as a Dutch door. And we have light fixtures over the entry and the window bay here. They'll be painted, they're a linear fixture, surface mounted, and they'll be painted out to match the surrounding marble. Some signage, two very simple signs. You can see them here. It'll be a brushed stainless steel sleeve that'll go over one single unit of the masonry. It'll be pressure fit with set screws, so there's no penetration into the marble itself. Right now, the proposal's for laser cutting that, the gallery name, and there'll be one on Broadway and one on Lafayette Street. Final lap. In order to provide flexibility for the gallery going forward, we've sort of looked to two provisions within LPC's rules to help give us guidance on how to make this a functioning art space going forward. We've talked about the system of anchors and attachments. Those would be permanent attachments within the space that would then provide flexibility to do almost anything within. The real limitation here is that we don't know what anybody wants to do. This is meant to be iterative and evolving and really a dialogue with the architecture. So that we're trying to maintain that flexibility as part of that. So this flexible system of anchors and attachments, and then looking to the LPC rules for theaters and how they regulate production-related changes, and also the rules for temporary installation. So here we have, so we've set up 3 tiers. Tier 1 is work that would not require a permit. And so this is a system of, this could be freestanding pedestals and sculpture. This could be artwork hung or stabilized or attached at flat plaster or through other non-invasive means. So clamps, Velcro, magnets. There's currently a temporary exhibit up at the building now that has mastered all of these techniques. Walter has invested in earth magnets. And then partitions that utilize the system of anchors. And so here we see a few conditions that could be possible under that tier 1 condition. So partitions, dynamic installations through the space that you can temporarily compartmentalize areas of the banking hall. And so the typical exhibit, the banking hall will be primarily the exhibition program, and that those exhibits will run 3 or 4 months, sometimes 6, but they're in the business of selling art, so no one wants it to hang around very long. They need the flexibility for that to change. But in the smaller galleries, including those in the executive offices, those might change on a daily basis. There might be new installations weekly. So no one wants to overburden the staff or the gallery in terms of doing things as long as they're doing them correctly. And here are a couple of more examples of those installations. On the right is a good example of the sort of hung strategy. So you can see a structural member spanning this. So this is attached at the rods that we talked about earlier, and then it's really just suspending this artwork here. And then on the right, this is a system that creates sort of tension wires attached at the floor and at the ceiling to support artwork. So all of that is possible in this under these conditions. Tier 2 would require review by the staff, require staff level permitting, and that is this will follow the rules that the staff currently applies for temporary installations, with the exception that temporary installations, as similar to what we have in the space currently, temporary installations have a 1-year limit on them. And so with this provision, we would be proposing to allow for 2 years for that. And the idea here is that if it were something of a larger scale and a real that could be used, or another artist wanted to use it, it gives them the flexibility to reuse the installation for varying exhibits, not just the single exhibit for which it was constructed for. And so these tier 2 installations would be, and this gets a little complicated, for larger scale architectural enclosures. So anything that would would be a full height enclosure system that occupies more than 1/2 of the volume of the space. So imagine a cube in the space occupying something more than 50% of it, just within that central hall. So not at the mezzanine, but in the double height space within the center of the space. So that would require staff review for those larger scale installations. And then anything that has means of invasive attachment or removal and repair of historic material. And then tier 3 provides some flexibility in this for the staff at their discretion to determine that something requires review by the commission, either because of large-scale removals that would result in integrity issues for the material itself, or if there were concerns about removals and salvage, just how that's being done technically, and then, of course, if something was longer term than 2 years. If anything was ever permanent, that would also be subject to review, but this is all just for temporary installations. So I think that pretty much wraps it up. I'm going to drink water now, and be happy to hear your questions and discussion.
Thank you very much, and good job getting through a lot of components to this application. And I think you did it very well. Commissioners, do we have any questions? Yes, Commissioner Goldblum.
How do you quantify the limits on the events? How do you determine, this is a tier 1, this is a tier 2? If I drop it down, 1.5 inches from the ceiling, it will turn into a tier 1. How is tier 1 kind of bounded?
Tier 1 would be bounded by maybe we'll go to tier 2 to explain it a little better. So this is the area for tier 2. So anything that extended beyond 50% of this area in terms of enclosure, so a full height enclosure within that area. So everything that we're showing here would be possible under Tier 1 because it's not rising to as a full height enclosure. And we can probably provide some clarification. We don't, when we say full height enclosure, it's not going into the ceiling. It's below the ceiling plane. But things that sort of flexible cubes like this would not be limited under Tier 1.
Other questions?
I
Yes,
got
Commissioner Ginsburg.
a number of them. And this is a very thoughtful presentation, and the issue is how you fit the program in. So I've got, first of all, how do you get handicapped access to the offices? Well, but is the elevator, that typically you need to have the same access you're doing, that's the residential elevator. So how do you?
There's a separate here, trying to get to the plan. We're going to be here a little while, but there is from the Lafayette Street entry, there's an ADA elevator.
Right.
Right, and that takes you up to the banking hall level. And then there is a separate elevator at the west end of the space that takes you up to the, yes, it does, up to the mezzanine. Yes.
Okay.
And then the mezzanine would connect you.
Right,
Yeah.
okay, that answers that. Why can't the gallery viewing space room on top of the bank vault be in the office space?
There are different programmatic needs for the gallery in the office space. I mean, they have a sort of established set of staffing and meetings for the directors and for the assistants. And there is the intention in terms of having a meeting area in the gallery itself is that this is the primary exhibit area for the gallery, and that they want the continuity of being able to bring people in and not have to leave the exhibition area. And so it's a sort of ceremonial and operational need that is very important to them and needs to function sort of within the context of the overall banking hall. It's minimal kind of change at the vault that I think, we've always thought about it as a next version of what we see in those the photos from the city occupancy, where people were having meetings on the top of the vault. And I think that very much inspired an idea to use the space. It's not meant to be in isolation. It wants to be part of the conversation with what's happening around it.
Okay, my next question, the pendant lighting in the hall. I understand why you need the strip lighting and the general house lighting. What is that doing?
Brian, are you on the Zoom? Brian McIntyre? Maybe it's up lighting the ceiling, yeah.
But couldn't you do that with the pendants you're putting in and the track lighting you're putting in?
The pendants, yes. The pendants are up.
No,
lighting
I
with
mean the strip linear lights can
Mhm.
have an up lighting component as well as a down
down
lighting.
lighting, yeah.
And the track lighting can also have lights that focus on
Up,
the ceiling.
yeah.
And then I have one
Oh,
other.
Commissioner, could we have Brian McIntyre, the lighting designer, could I have him perhaps opine on
course.
this? Okay, Brian, go ahead.
Yeah, this is Brian. Can everyone hear me okay? Regarding the pendants, it's twofold. I think those pendants are really initially intended to provide lighting specifically for that historic architecture, whereas the adjacent lights really aren't in a good position to uplight that ceiling. So the basic idea is that it's more about providing a level of architectural illumination for the purposes of lighting the environment, not necessarily the artwork itself.
Thank you. And then I have one other question. The exterior door on Broadway looks like it's going to need, if that's handicapped accessible, going to need actuators on the inside and outside because of the depth of it, which I didn't see. Is that something that is going to be required? And if so, how are you doing it?
We do need them, right? Yeah, and so we can take a look at that, but thank you for pointing that out. It would be on the return of the marble. The actuator would be on the return of the marble on the inside face. Right.
Okay, thank you.
Not a stanchion.
Okay. Oops, Vice Chair Bland.
Simple question. That scissor lift being stored under the stair, but not the ceremonial stair that's been moved, another stair, right?
Yeah, there's a secondary, there's another stair within that connects to the mezzanine on the west side of the space.
Okay, all right, fine.
Yes, Commissioner Jefferson.
So I have a couple of questions that have to do with concept and approach. Okay, this is an existing space, and you have program for this space. You have elements in this space that all require different tools or design tools to make them effective and work. And where I become confused is, I mean, if the offices, for example, the design approach we took for that was to put glass that turns dark to light. That's a reasonable approach for that. Where you have the stairs, you're kind of restoring them somewhat, the handrails and stuff. And it'd be useful for me to understand all these elements that you have, what approach in the toolbox that we have as designers. And what, at the end of the day, the relationships are going to be in contrast, right? Because you can't match what's there. And the degree of contrast is what I guess we're all thinking about. And how then, if you could present it in such a way that says, you know, I'm restoring this. Hey, you know, start. And here we're doing, you say full finish. What degree is that? I mean, why full finish there? You know, so it's such a complex, beautiful project that it needs some kind of diagram of clarity, but at least for me to understand it in some reasonable way, and what at the final analysis, what's going to be. You know, I don't know how you.
I think, you know, just in terms of, if we could take maybe the faux finish as a case study for the whole thing. I think the intent there, when we first started to look at it, was let's make a seamless door within that marble slab. And how do you do that? And then realizing the challenges of it, and then stepping back and say, oh, then we can do a lightweight door and with something. And then and this is 2 years of process, right? So by the time we get to a place where it's like, let's preserve the material itself and salvage it so that it has, it can be replaced, and that we're not cutting into that material, and then but make it seamless in the way that we had intended to. And I think, you know, I'll start for Carlos and Jack, but maybe they want to speak to this too. The intention here is for all of those insertions to have a very clear, modern vocabulary. The faux finish is trying to, it's all in an effort to be quiet and seamless. And I think that the faux finish is still rising to the level of that modernity or contemporary installation. It just is, it's in trying to make itself not an element in the space. And I think that much of this design, that is the sort of overall approach, is that you're trying to sort of establish a contemplative place where you can experience art, and that there's a quietness to it, where you can engage in the art and the architecture.
Thank you.
All right, other questions? Yep, Commissioner Chu, then followed by Commissioner Lutfi.
Yeah, I just have a few questions. I think that the comment you just made was really sort of the bigger picture approach to this intervention. And thank you so much for a very detailed presentation. I think for lots of us, the details tell us everything, and this is the job where the devil's in. it's really how it's executed. I have little comments that I can bring up later, but I guess based on what you said, you've made very clear the point that the intervention is intended to be perceived as not confused with the historic background. You want to make a dialogue and a distinction. I think it would help us to understand a little better about how that strategy has been implemented in the various areas, because the details are plentiful, but at the end of the day, we get caught in the details when we're trying to, what's the story? And I think that's what Eduardo was referring to. When I look at the biggest intervention that I can see in the proposal is really with the effect of the volume of the main space, which is this viewing space on the mezzanine. If I look at the plan, it looks like it actually blocks the plan and the circulation behind their doors, I think, on the sides. So you can't, at some point, it becomes a dead end on those two ends. You cannot go through it. So conceptually, you probably have a way to deal with that, right? Because we don't want to see, and what I look for is I don't want to see a blockage in something that was intended to be a beautiful open volume. And so it depends on how you execute that. When you I guess extend or extrude the volume from the vault, it bothers me because I feel like it's confusing, the language. And I think there are simple things that have been done that I like, which is the basic gallery wall base detail, which floats and allows air movement there, or mechanical system is introduced in those locations. Very minimal and clean, not touching the ceiling. I just wonder if there wasn't a way to really look at the major element to us, I think, is that volume and the opacity of the white wall there. If it could have floated and not actually came down and became even more of an element that connected to the vault, which never came up that high. So I don't want to pick on that one topic, but I think that's my general feeling is looking at every condition, and if there's a dialogue and if there's a distinction where every partition hits a column, I get nervous because when I see a partition of sheetrock hitting a column that has all kinds of antithesis and then base and head detail at the Capitol, I know that it's going to look a little messy, right? So it makes me think there's probably a simple detail that's elegant that you could have recessed a bit, had a recessed area that engaged, and then made a clear diagram of this is the new display wall here, and not try to just, because the stone does it, but that's the historic condition there. So, yeah, I think it's.
Carlos, do you want to speak to this a little bit? I mean, you have to come up here and maybe speak to the sort of the philosophical approach to it.
And just before you speak, just if you could also state your name for the record, and because we're on Zoom also, if you can bring the mic close to your face, that would be helpful.
Hi, I'm Carlos Vega, and I understand the challenge of seeing the ball with the space above. But there is a need to have discretion and, invisibility at certain point for a small work on the gallery or meetings, and I don't know, I think
Yeah, I definitely respect the needs that you have as gallery owners and operators. That I don't question that. And because this is a change of use of this space, it's going to have interesting things that people are surprised about because of what you're doing. I'm just saying about the execution. And I specifically don't like the way it's sitting on top.
we understand it, but it's, I think it's necessary to have that level of privacy in such a vulnerable space, and also that the space really has been always complicated to make it work. When you see historical photos, you see that there is the love for the architecture, but there is the needs of business.
Right.
And there is that this process of trying to be respectful and make it work. The way the walls intersect columns, we we have visited all possible ways of engaging. And I think once it's done, it's going to be better than, it's going to be alive. In a way, what it really is the challenge is to bring life to that.
Yeah, I support everything you're saying. I think I'm making a more fine distinction there. It's the connections.
And so I think that there are, and we can look at this in plan, there are practical, obviously, needs being addressed.
Right.
The details there, I mean, I sort of disagree because I think I have confidence in the gallery execution of it, only because they're expert preparators. Their business is in making things exquisitely detailed and clean for the presentation of art. So I think that all of those details will be perfectly executed. And I think that it's a simple loss of area that you retract relocate the walls behind the problem line or something like that, where we're, they sort of meet at the midpoint, can't get back to the.
That's okay. I don't want to get into too much and I know staff can help work with the team and they've done a great job in the past. I just want to, one point I just want to make to summarize it, which is that the original building had a clear distinction of what was furniture and what is architecture. And I just think that that's the line that we just need to be careful to watch. Right.
Okay, and is it on this particular subject? Because oh, okay, sorry. I was trying to get to you.
And I guess it's, taste makes the world go round. I guess I'm in the business of that. I just want to counterpoint to your, because I've shown this to a lot of people, and in fact, architects and different people in the art world that I respect, a lot of people love that volume above the vault. It's the antithesis of everything. It doesn't look like it's historic, and it serves a function. And actually the form above it, that volume, that rectangle, it looks so good in many people's. That's all it is.
All right, Commissioner Jefferson, and then we'll go to Commissioner Lutfi.
Okay, my concern is not the details. I think the approach, the boldness of what you're doing. I just want a clarity of the boldness. I mean, if you're using modernism, modern, and you're using minimal or you're using modern with some kind of detail, kind of refinement, and I'm not sure which way you're going. So I just want a clarity of intention, of concept.
Okay, Commissioner Lutfi.
Some of my questions have already been asked, so these are very minor. What is the material on the vault door? It's white. What is it? White paint? The vault. It's white paint. And what's under it?
Very heavy steel.
Steel. And the plan is to leave it. Okay. And then what kind of shades are you using?
You have to stand up.
So that the Zoom can pick you up. Yep.
White, and it's 3%, so you do see through it.
Okay, got it. And then did you say that when you were talking about the lighting, I wasn't sure I understood that the fixtures were still being finalized? Or is what we're seeing in the appendix what's chosen?
That's what I hope I said, was that on the track lighting, so for the exhibits, that is flexible fixture. So what we're showing is some combination of those, but it's really going to be directed by the installation.
Got it. Thank you.
All right, Commissioner Ginsburg.
Yeah.
So you won't see the optical. I'm not sure.
Yeah,
there's
it's not going to
anybody
be in,
around,
yeah.
but
It won't be in its, if it, not in its closed position, it won't be in the back. Yeah, correct.
All right, other questions? All right, let's move to public testimony. We may have more questions after that. So we have one person who signed up in person, Jeremy Woodoff.
My name is Jeremy Woodoff, and I'm speaking for the Board of Save America's Clocks, of which I am a member. Save America's Clocks is a not-for-profit organization dedicated to locating, inventorying, and assisting in the preservation and maintenance of America's public clocks. Here in New York, we have assisted in the restoration of several designated landmark sidewalk post clocks. Our board member, Marvin Schneider, is the city's official clock master who keeps city-owned public clocks running and on time. Those of you who have been commissioners for a while will remember us as a member of the coalition that brought an Article 78 proceeding against the commission in 2016. The proceeding challenged the decision under the previous chair to approve modifications to the designated clock tower interior of the building that is the subject of today's C of A hearing. We continue to view the decision as shameful. Shameful because it allowed the privatization of a formerly public designated landmark interior. Shameful because it approved the destruction of the very reason for its designation, the historic clock mechanism. And shameful because none of this was necessary to the success of the larger building rehabilitation and reuse project. The decision was so bad that the coalition won, meaning the C of A was vacated, at the Supreme Court and appellate division levels, overturned only in a split decision at the Court of Appeals. The court ruled the commission didn't break the law. It did, however, break the public trust. In the public hearing at which the proposed work was approved, the applicant and his architect promised that the 4 dials in the tower would unfailingly tell time by means of new electric motors. In the 2019 restrictive declaration for the project, the commission endorsed this promise and added that regular inspections of the tower would occur. These would ensure that the portion of the clock mechanism remaining in place was intact and well cared for, and that the portions of the mechanism that were removed were safely stored. Neither of these promises has been kept. There has never been an inspection of the space to our knowledge. Neither the public nor apparently the commission has any idea what the state of the clock is in the still designated clock tower interior. Nor have the 4 tower dials been telling correct time, each being off, sometimes wildly off. We have documented this failure weekly over a period of years. This is a far cry from the perfect performance of the mechanical clock for over 30 years under the restoration and care of the clockmaster. We urge that the discretionary approvals for work at this building being requested today not be granted until the promises made by the developer and the commission codified in the restrictive declaration are kept, that regular inspections of the clock tower interior and clock mechanism are undertaken and reported, and that the timekeeping function works properly. And if I can take 10 more seconds, finally, in regard to the current proposal, this is a cautionary tale about the need to keep preservation and the public interest in the forefront. Thank you.
And before we do that, I just want, is there anyone else in the room who wishes to testify on this item? Okay. Yes, did you raise your hand? Okay, please come up to the podium and just state your name before you speak, and you have 3 minutes.
My name is Rose Whitwell. I'm speaking on behalf of Sarah Bartlett. So the following words are entirely hers. She could not be here because of a scheduling issue. My name is Sarah Bartlett, and I want to express my support for the work that Jack Shainman is proposing to do at the building where I now reside, 346 Broadway, also known as 108 Leonard. My interest in supporting his proposal stems from my 41 years as a Tribeca resident and as someone with a deep appreciation of the neighborhood's historic buildings. My late husband, John Petrarca, was a prominent architect in Tribeca who co-chaired the Landmarks Committee of Community Board 1 for many years. He and I moved to Tribeca in 1982 to begin renovating the tiny Flatiron-like building on the corner of Reed and Greenwich Street. I later bought and renovated one of the historical townhouses on Harrison Street, a process that included me seeking and receiving approval from the Landmarks Preservation Commission. When it came time for me to downsize, there was no building I wanted to live in more than 108 Leonard Street. The majestic architecture, the marble stairs that bear the indentation of thousands of steps taken before mine, the soaring ceilings, the arched windows, these feats of design inspire me every day. I believe that our neighborhood and our building are incredibly fortunate to have attracted someone with the reputation and integrity of Jack Shainman to finish the renovation of Bank Hall and increase public access to this historic treasure. From what I can tell of his proposed plans, he intends to go above and beyond what he is obligated to do in order to preserve historic details that make this building so unique. I can attest that other Leonard Street residents have expressed their delight on our WhatsApp group chat that a prominent gallery owner known for being highly principled and responsible has agreed to become the commercial anchor of our building. His recent decision to offer residents a private reception to celebrate the pop-up opening of the gallery struck me as an indication of his commitment to being a good, constructive neighbor. Lest anyone wonder, I have not asked for, nor would I accept anything in exchange for voicing my support. I am merely here to say that I am impressed by the vision that Shainman has expressed publicly for his new gallery space and the extent to which he is willing to go financially to actualize it. I believe that his level of determination deserves support, and I hope that you will concur. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak on this item? Okay. There are other people who signed up in the room? Okay.
Hello, my name is Anne-Brigitte Sirois. I am the principal of ArtState LLC. My company specializes in curatorial development for the arts in Manhattan. There's much I could say about the great impact the Jack Shainman Gallery will have on the Tribeca community, but I think you already know that. I could also speak about Jack and Carlos's deep love and respect for historic architecture and what fabulous custodians they will be for the hall, but I trust their presentation illustrated that better than I ever could. So I'm going to address what is to me the most unusual and groundbreaking aspect of this selection of space, namely Jack and Carlos's examination and engagement with the space through the prism of its history. Although this may sound nebulous and somewhat art world-y, it is significant and now constitutes a tangible reference for contemporary art gallerists. Here, the Jack Shainman Gallery paves the way for a new type of lexicon, where the goal is not for all architectural elements to disappear neatly behind the art, but rather to engage with it selectively and at will, and where spatial considerations are not reduced to shape and geometry, but include considerations beyond their forms. It's a big deal, because traditionally high-caliber contemporary art is presented in an all-white rectilinear box where everything but the art is invisible and silent. A great harmony will always exist between modern art and modernist architecture. The 1997 inaugural opening of the Matthew Marks Gallery in Chelsea, featuring minimalist monochromes by Ellsworth Kelly, comes to mind. A perfect white box in which the presentation of abstract art is elevated to its purest form. The hall, with its coffered gilded ceilings, Corinthian marble columns, and over 50 monumental windows, will never be that. And herein lies the interesting departure. It's a fine line to draw for a gallery, a risky business move, one might think, and I would say I agree. But that is what makes this forward-thinking, emotionally charged, socially minded gallery so fascinating. The hall will offer its artists the option to present in an environment that is inherently less insular, an environment with its own signature and story, a place where the artist's voice will engage differently. It is through this kind of effort and desire to heal, Joseph Beuys argued, that we eradicate stereotype. It must be said, I don't know of any other gallery with as much passion, vision, integrity, and audacity.
Okay, thank you.
It's a fine and powerful example of what a gallery can contribute.
Thank you so much for your testimony.
All right. Is there anyone else in the room who would like to speak on this item? All right. And before we go to the remote participants, I'll ask our general counsel to respond to the first testimony.
Yeah, Commissioners, I'd just like to say a couple things about the clock tower. The commission has has inspected the clock tower mechanism a number of times. The clock tower mechanism is being preserved. It's in the exact same state it was at the time that it was decommissioned. We have passed on all the complaints to the owners about clock faces not working and whatever, and we will continue to do so. And we'll continue to work with Save America's Clocks to make sure that they are continuing to, keep the clock operating as it is supposed to. But we have seen that the mechanism is encased and protected and is in the same condition as it was at the time of the decision.
Thank you. All right, now I'll turn it over to Gregory Kala to see if we have any remote participants.
Thank you, Chair Carroll. We have a few hands raised in our attendees list over Zoom. The first person we'll be hearing from is Lynn Funk. So Lynn Funk, I am promoting you to panelist right now. Please unmute your line and state your name for the record. You'll have 3 minutes to speak. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. I'll start my video. And this is Lynn Funk for the Victorian Society of New York. Good morning, Commissioners. It appears to us that the applicant has chosen the wrong space for their gallery. Many permanent changes are proposed that will obscure, damage, or deface protected architectural features of this magnificent interior. These changes include permanent walls in front of architectural features, boxy enclosures intruding into the space, structural anchors to allow a steel grid to hang from the ornate ceiling, this decorative plasterwork moved to accommodate motorized window blinds, a great many permanent lighting fixtures, and so on. Other galleries the applicant shows as precedents appear to be more sensitively designed. The features added to these other spaces are all clearly temporary and kept away from the ceiling and wall surfaces. The designers of this gallery space and the commission need to begin with the premise that this is a rare interior landmark. Protection of its physical fabric and visual character should be primary. This proposal falls short of that. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Next up, we will be hearing from Bruce Ehrman. Bruce Ehrman, I am promoting you to panelist right now. So please unmute your line and state your name for the record. You'll have 3 minutes to speak. Thank you.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Hi, I'm Bruce Ehrman. I was for over 2 decades the chair or co-chair of the Landmarks and Preservation Committee of Community Board 1 Manhattan, which includes this catchment area. I am here representing the community board. However, I think you have our approved resolution, so I need not elaborate on that. Therefore, I am testifying as a citizen, as a 36-year resident of Tribeca, as someone who originally bought our loft with a artist in residence certification. My wife is an artist. I can only say that having reviewed thousands of applications over these years in Community Board 1, I can't recall a single application this complicated that was approved unanimously without any suggested modifications. This application needs to be seen holistically. If it is seen microcosmically, it will tear the program apart. I must say that I did not know Jack Shainman and Carlos Vega personally, only by reputation prior to this endeavor. That being said, as I came to understand this application more closely over the months, I have to say, I don't think I've ever come across someone as maniacally interested in preserving a space that's overwhelming and that was almost lost to us. There was a fire in that space from the last conservator, who wasn't a very conservationist owner. The monumentality of what is being presented here is yeah, like some of the commissioners have said, it's almost overwhelming, but one must put it in the context of not only the physical landmark, but also the de facto cultural landmark, which has been alluded to by other speakers. There still is, it's not LPC's fault, but there still is a stain in the community relative to the privatization and expropriation of the clock tower, which was not only a designated interior landmark, but also one of the main stakes in the cultural lifetime of this community. Elena Heiss, who went on to PS1, established what was a wonderful, openly accessible art space that served our community for 30 years. Be that as it may, there is some kind of poetic justice in a major gallerist who has a reputation for, for authenticity and staying with their artists.
Okay.
To
Bruce,
take
I'm
this,
terribly sorry. If you could please summarize your
okay.
testimony.
So anyway, I will go back to the specifics and say that that I think there's been an extraordinary obsessive care with which this space has been designed to serve both the community, the goals of landmarking, and the ability to actually negotiate art and display and sell art.
Thank you so much for your testimony. And next up, we will be hearing from Lucy Levine from the Historic Districts Council. Lucy Levine, I'm promoting you to panelist right now. Please unmute your line and state your name for the record. You'll have 3 minutes to speak. Thank you.
Hi, Commissioners. My name is Lucy Levine. I'm speaking on behalf of the Historic Districts Council. HDC is a passionate advocate for adaptive reuse of landmark buildings and interiors, but we find this gallery space largely inappropriate as proposed, so we offer testimony in the hopes that this applicant will achieve an appropriate solution for using this space. First, it is necessary to note that this interior is itself a work of art. That's why it's landmarked. The art gallery proposed here should showcase this interior's landmarked features, not cover them up. We object to aspects of this proposal that affix display walls to landmark surfaces, obscuring the landmark doors, windows, staircases, plasterwork, and other features from view. Similarly, we object to the proposed film on the windows because it's destructive to the public experience of the building from both within and without, though particularly from the street, and is therefore anti-urban. We believe the applicant should make use of this building's vast interior space using freestanding displays that are oriented toward the space's interior, not shoved up against its landmark walls or affixed to its landmark surfaces. That way, the gallery's art can be on display, and this site's landmarked features can also be on display. Use of this space should not sacrifice one for the other. Thank you.
Hello.
Hello. Hi, Nick Cave?
Yes, it is.
Hello. If you could please state your name for the record, and you will have 3 minutes to speak.
Okay, great. Thank you. Hello, I am Nick Cave. I'm a very close friend of Jack Shaman as well as Carlos Vega. I am also one of many artists that are represented by the Jack Shaman Gallery. I'm here to advocate approval for his gallery landmark adaptation, reuse of McKim, Mend, and White's historic New York life insurance building, Bank Hall, and adjacent historic offices. Jack is a visionary. When he first saw the historic life insurance building located on Lafayette and Broadway, he was very, very excited. But it was when he went inside and experienced the bank hall is where he saw his future. Jack's trust, loyalty, and commitment to his artist is life-changing. His passion and desires are endless. Jack Shaman Gallery presence in the historical life insurance building would not only enhance the neighborhood with art and culture, but it would also be a beacon of light for the city of New York. On behalf of artists and myself, we are full of enthusiasm and excitement for this time and moment. Jack Shaman Gallery's future is my future. I want to thank the commissioners and respected landmark staff for this time. Have a good day.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Okay, I do not see any further hands raised. Is there anybody else? Okay. And with that, I will note that Manhattan Community Board 1 recommends approval unless it is confirmed that any part of the privatized art gallery condominium spaces is also part of the deed restricted public media lab space. And with that, I will bring it back to you, Chair Carroll.
Okay, thank you. And I'll turn it back to the applicants, but perhaps our general counsel can also address the deed restriction.
Yes, Chair Carroll, the restrictive, as part of the disposition, there was a requirement that there be community space in this in this building. None of the designated spaces, this particular space included, is part of those deed restrictions that were to be used for community facilities. So there's still there may be an issue. I'm not sure whether there's an issue or not about access to any community facility, but that has nothing to do with this space.
So I'd like to ask now if you'd like to respond to the other comments we've heard.
Thank you, Chair. It was good to hear the supportive testimony and also the critical opinion of the project. I think it's very interesting, the perspective I think HDC and others might have mentioned, the sort of attitude about focusing toward the center of the room. It's really no wonder that all of these spaces become event spaces, because people are challenged by the idea of integrating new program into these spaces. And this was a largely symbolic space, but it always had people working in it. There were always, in addition, as Commissioner Chu pointed out, there was furniture, there's the public and the sort of private arenas of the space, but there were partitions and compartmentalizations, Heller cages, all sorts of enclosures within the space. And I think in terms of the gallery, the sort of, as an adaptive reuse project, we've all accepted, and the Commission has approved this in the past, modifications that enable a use to be viable in a space. And I mean, I personally, for one, don't want every one of these spaces to just be catering halls. This allows public accessibility in a way, I mean, it's free and open to the public. It's not, you don't have to be honored to go there. And I think that has a real difference and deserves some consideration in terms of, the Commission doesn't normally consider use, but these are publicly used spaces. That's why they're designated. And I think that that's a very important aspect of it. The minimal amount of walls that are added, they they provide for it's not just exhibiting art. There's a program and an operation that has to happen here. They're in the business of selling art. They meet with people. They have registrars, administration, librarians. It's a whole business that operates under this. And all of those people are going to be working in this space. It's an entirely new opportunity to have a fresh perspective on what's possible in that from an artistic perspective, but also as a workplace. And I think that in regard to walls being attached to historic finishes or other blocking things, there is going to be an experience of the architecture here that is very different than any other use would provide. This is going to take people to the perimeter of the space. If you're focusing everything on the center, no one is understanding the ins and outs of the columns or being able to meander through those spaces. This is an entirely different perspective. And I think, again, this space was on the market for 7 years. You saw the conditions when the city controlled it. There is, and we're working from a blank slate because it had the benefit of being restored. If we were coming in with the existing condition in 2013, this would be an entirely different application, but it's been stripped of all of that, all those layers, the sprinklers, the hung lights, the partitions, the white painted everything. And so I think all of that really factors into the perspective for this project. And then finally, I would just say a little bit about the enclosure of the vault. I think we're at a disadvantage because we're looking at things in isolation. Commissioner Chu picked up on this. We have that one view that shows sort of the four perspectives within the space once it's fully constructed, but it's always going to be much more than that. This is the bare essentials, and then there's always going to be exhibits, activity, and life within the space. So we're never going to be viewing the enclosure on the vault in isolation. It's all within a sort of broader context of art and vitality. That's it for me.
Okay, thank you very much. Commissioners, do we have any final questions? All right, then let's make a motion to close the hearing. Commissioner Master, would you make a motion to close the hearing?
So moved.
Thank you. Vice Chair Bland, would you second that motion?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the hearing is closed and we'll begin our discussion now. And I just want to sort of set it up with a little context. As we know, interior designations are very special places. They are designated public spaces that are really special because of their architectural character and atmosphere, but that is derived from the finishes, the fixtures, and the sort of overall volume of the space. And so it's very different from an exterior landmark, and they are very special spaces. And I'd also say that the commission has recognized the challenges of reusing them. And as has been pointed out by the applicant, many of our interior landmarks, besides the theaters, which continue to operate as theaters, have been adaptively reused for sort of public-private event spaces. And that's great, and that's worked well. But we've always allowed for some flexibility to accommodate a new use. And I do think one of the benefits of this particular use, while it does maybe require some additional thought and challenges, I think one of the benefits is that it is a completely open, publicly open and space that anyone can walk into. And I think there is something exciting about the juxtaposition of the contemporary art with the historic architecture. And so I think that this use, while we'll have to work through the aspects of the actual installations, has the opportunity to be a very magical experience. And I really thank you for your commitment to this space. And so there will be this exciting connection between art and architecture, contemporary and historic fabric, that I think will enhance the space as well as the art viewing experience. But to accommodate this, there are a number of things that are needed, started with mechanical equipment, which we often see in interior landmark. There are some insertions for desk spaces, desks at the windows, and then these sort of pergola open spaces, display walls, some that are floating and intended to be reversible in nature at walls and windows and around and above the vault. Doors, new doors on the interior and the exterior to the different spaces. Ceiling changes, lights, anchor points, also anchor points at the ceiling, and motorized shades. So these are all sort of the aspects that we'll have to think about as we talk in our comments. In addition, there is the installations for the future installations, which have been sort of categorized as tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3. Tier 1 being things that can come and go on a regular, frequent basis without a permit. Other installations that would be approved at staff level going forward, sort of based on our temporary installation rules, and then other installations that would certainly come back to us because they're for a longer period of time or have a larger impact or a larger attachment to historic fabric. And then on the outside, of course, we have the window changes, the door changes, and very minimal plaque signage that we'll need to discuss. So these are all the various components within this sort of broader, larger approach of accommodating art, programming, and installation in this really important space. So I'm excited to hear our comments and have a discussion on this, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how this can move forward. Commissioner Goldblum, and I do want to say some of the commissioners have been to the site, so I'm going to start with those commissioners and then move on to everybody else. Commissioner Goldblum.
Thank you. Can you hear me? No? Closer? That's okay, good. All right. So yeah, this is a very complicated application in a very important and relatively rare kind of landmark. And I think it almost begs the kind of granular examination that the applicants provided in their presentation, and that's great. I think it's really great to have a chance to really look at the details. And the experience of an interior space is so much more, I think, dependent on the success of those details. So I think it's appropriate that we should look at this very carefully. And I want to say in general, I think that the proposed new use is fantastic. I think that a gallery space, using this space as a gallery is a wonderful use and a wonderful opportunity for the neighborhood and for the building. And I think generally there are many aspects of the application that I think are totally appropriate. Let me start with the banking hall. I think the general concept of the banking hall is sound. I think that there are details that should be re-examined, in my opinion. I think that the change of the rear non-historic railing to white, I think if there's a theme to my thoughts, it's that white is a funny color. White sometimes works to make things disappear and sometimes works to make things highlighted. And I think that there's a over-application of white in this project where it kind of makes things much more outstanding and loud as opposed to quiet and recessive. So I think that the use of white for that back railing, even though it's a non-historic railing, is the wrong way to go because it is attracting too much attention to itself. I think that there's an exit sign under that stair that we saw yesterday that was just abysmal. This is the relocated historic stair. The applicant should look at moving that. I think that the new mezzanine walls that are throughout the project, they're at the mezzanine, they're on the first level. On the mezzanine, I have no problem with that viewing room. I think that as an object, it's appropriate. I mean, if you look at the historic way that the space was occupied and that the space was understood, it really was kind of building out from that central alley of stone, or the central pathway, the carpet of stone down the center of the runway, out with low stuff and then high stuff. And the dominance of the vault is striking. And I think that dominance remained even after the very impactful addition of the mezzanine. And I think that if we're going to try to hold on to something, I think it's the prominence of that vault. So I think that the mezzanine walls that are above in the viewing room and elsewhere should not be higher than the bottom of the capitals, you know, where the stone stops and the bronze starts. I think that, again, the color of the outside walls of the viewing room actually confuse it with the vault. I think that the white is not the right color. I mean, sheetrock may not be the right material, but I mean, one of the most striking things about the space for me yesterday was the high contrast level between the stuff that was white and the stuff that wasn't. You know, the columns, the walls were always white. The capitals, the ceiling were always dark. And that contrast, that kind of play between high contrast, dark and light elements, I think is very central to the experience of the space. So I think that making that box white, at least from the outside, is not the right move. The side display wall should stop at the mezzanine floor and not continue down to cover the vault doors. The vault doors are very important to understand what the space was. And frankly, you know, if they do their temporary exhibitions, they can do pretty, you know, the same job that wall was going to do without having to permanently cover the vault doors. And I think that the side walls of the viewing room should be set back. I think it's okay to remove the railing, but I don't think that they should be coplanar with the side walls of the vault. They should work to re-emphasize the importance of the vault, not kind of throw it off, tilt it. I think that the pergolas on the east wall mezzanine, if they can be symmetrical, that would be better. Symmetry is so important to the way you view that axis. And one, I think, is larger than the other. I think on the south wall, the partitions kind of come forward into the space too much. I think that they should attach to, you know, the columns have this kind of square marble addendum back of them that encloses a cast iron support for the balcony. I think that's where the sheetrock should plug in so that the columns can be experienced in full, pretty much, instead of cutting them in half. That goes to what Stephen was talking about that nasty intersection where the partitions hit the bases. If you haven't touched that stone kind of addendum at the back, you won't have that. What else? The west wall, the floating center wall below the cast iron Corinthian. Yeah, everything on the west wall. You have the corral for the scissor lift. You have the library. Everything should come down to the height of the Corinthian columns, capitals. Again, so again, you're differentiating. If they're doing it already, they should just do it a little bit more. The lighting. Here again, white is not your friend. The white lights up against that ceiling make it stand out like lightning bolts. I think they should be a dark color that's more recessive relative to the ceiling. I think they can also hang down a little further so that the ceiling can be seen in juxtaposition to the lighting. They're too close to the lighting, to the ceiling. I think linear fixtures on the lower level are fine. The floor, the gray stain, struck me as a color that seems to fight with the runway. I think it should be a little more deferent to the runway as an envelope color. The blanked out windows on the perimeter are going to look funny. I mean, I think the idea of putting the LEDs in the film is okay, but I think it will have a very staccato look. Granted, it is on an alley, but it's an alley that is open to the public and is part of the public way. So, I mean, I think it would be, could they use it for display? Maybe the staff should just work with them on what the right color is for the inside of the sheetrock that's going to face there so that it doesn't it doesn't pop out. I think the signage is fine. I think the exterior doors are good. I think the lighting at the exterior is very good. I think that the tier 1 applications should have a height limit that should be no higher than the top of the mezzanine floor. I think that if that's the case, you know, they're going to use that for the most part anyway. And I think that beyond that, staff can review.
Okay. Commissioner Ginsburg.
Thank you. And I agree with a lot of what Commissioner Goldblum said. I first want to say I really want to help make this work. And so I have some comments, etc. To me, the most important thing about this is the space. And anything that really disrupts the space is going to bother me. I also, you know, there's then also the historic fabric and materials that we want to preserve. I really have no issues with the temporary standards and the structure to support it. I think what Commissioner Goldblum suggested about tier 1 being below the height of the capitals probably makes sense. So with that, let me just go through a number of specifics. As I said, the structure's fine. I think the work for the mechanical is fine. The doors are fine. The shades are fine. I do not want to see the bank vault fully blocked. And this gets to a general issue as much as possible. As Commissioner Chu said, there was lots of furniture in the space, but it was furniture. Movable partitions, walls that are not connected to the existing building, boxes that are not connected, you know, are, I think, a much better way to go than walls attached permanently, because those are then not furniture. I would not, I think the biggest comment as I have is the viewing room, which I just don't think should be there, because I think that really affects the space. I'm somewhat mixed about the mezzanine glass structures, but I can live with those. One of those could become the viewing room. The offices could be used as a viewing room, almost anything else, but filling in that area above the vault, I think is a mistake. I think the storage under the stair for the scissor lift is fine, but the wall should not continue above the stairs. The railing should continue to remain visible to keep that openness and the ability as you walk up the stairs to look out onto the space. In general, the lighting is fine, except for the pendants at the coffers. I would get rid of these. Commissioner Goldblum's comment that the strips could be lowered more, that would give up lighting. The track lights could also light the coffers. And I just, again, feel like that's junking up the space. I agree with what Commissioner Goldblum said about windows, particularly at the sculpture niche. I can understand having a shade behind it or something, but I don't want to permanently block that window if at all possible. And then finally, signage is fine. So I just think there need to be some tweaks here. And the biggest thing is around the bank vault.
Okay. Thank you. Commissioner Lutfi.
In general, this is an amazing project. And I really want to thank the applicant, including you, Erin, for the fantastic job you've done in pulling this, not, Erin, you're the presentation, part of the enthusiasm, and you did an amazing job. But I want to thank the applicant for your vision, your enthusiasm, your out of the box thinking, literally out of the white box thinking, which is typical of most galleries. And the fact that you are going to take a special place and continue to have it be a special place and provide access to the public so that they can not only appreciate the art by the wonderful artists you represent, but also the wonder of the space. And I do have to just echo what Erin said, which is, it is such a shame that so many like incredible spaces end up becoming catering galleries, although it's good for the people that that do it. But once when you're in them at an event, you're part of the mass and the crowd. And I personally feel the splendor of those spaces gets lost on so many levels because you're looking at what's ahead of you. But I have no doubt that the way ultimately you're going to be curating this space and using its attributes are going to, definitely do the opposite. I do want to also highlight all of the inspirations that you presented to us for spaces that you thought were used in a very special way to showcase art. I want to highlight the one that I personally experienced, which was the red and white quilts at the Park Avenue Armory. I don't think that is one of the most spectacular and special shows that I have ever seen. I walked into it in awe, not only about the art and how it was hung, but how it fit within that volume and how that volume was used to make that experience amazing on not only a visual level, but a sensory level. I think that was accomplished. And that's something that I'm just going to say the Park Avenue Armory does all the time. Okay. So all that said, I think I'm going to leave some of these really, devil in the detail specifics to my architect colleagues because, that's what their expertise is. Although I'll probably mention a few. One thing I just want to first move to the vault, because when I was in the space and actually after looking at the presentation, I really do feel that there is something about the volume on the top that just doesn't literally sit right with me. And maybe it needs to be stepped back a little bit, and maybe that would help. Maybe the color needs to change so it disappears more. I appreciate the need for more viewing areas, but you could also create one somewhere else. And I thought Commissioner Jefferson's reference to possibly even doing something interesting with it, the way you're doing with those insertions for offices, where you insert something that doesn't feel like it's taking up a lot of space, even it's sort of framing the rooms, it's providing a vision through them. And then the clever thing you're doing is those walls can darken when privacy is needed and whatever. I mean, that's just another idea that you might want to explore. It doesn't meet that particular goal of yours for that room. If doing some of the other things I suggested don't work, stepping it back, making it more neutral, et cetera. I do want to just go back to details for one more second because one thing, and I know somebody mentioned it, maybe Erin, one thing that galleries do especially well, and although it's going to be so important to be working with staff on the details, is taking their spaces and transforming them in a way that allows them to look fantastic as they perfectly present their artwork. And then after they take down I'm going to say take down the armature that you've put up, you put your space back to like another perfect space. So, the space that it was. So I think, I'm feeling that, as you work to tweak things, this is ultimately going to get to where it needs to be. I'm actually okay with the color of the floors. Floors are wood. I actually feel like you need the space for showing to be somewhat neutral, and the container that it's in, like with the ceiling and some other things, that should, that can hold, the contrast and some of the contrast in the columns and the railings, etc. I'm not in love with the white railing. I agree with Michael's comment. It seems almost to diminish the railing in a way. I mean, from a quality standpoint. I love your idea with, I love the work that you're doing in terms of the Oculus. I love the way you're anchoring some of your present display walls from the bottom and not connecting them at the top. I wish you would take the paint off the vault doors. Doesn't look that good. And, I think it might be nice to, again, just remind people, this is a bank vault. It's part of the space, and I don't think it's going to compete with anything you're doing. I think it's going to, from a texture and color standpoint, work quite well. I'm okay with the shades. I'm okay with the film. Michael's recommendation about tier 1 was a really good one. I also thought his recommendation about not having the light fixtures stand out in terms of their color would be helpful to the cohesiveness of the vision of the ceiling. Although I do not have a problem with the pendants, because I feel like, they're sort of the center of a flower. And I think that works well. I think your idea of opening the door entrances, not only do you need to do it, I think you're doing it well. In terms of the ground floor space, the doors are great. The signage really works. It's very low key. And I just want to make one more comment, which is that this space is going to contribute to the vitality of this neighborhood. And I want to thank you for being part of what is going to not only activate a ground floor space that has been inactive for such a long time. It's actually going to help attract people. How wonderful. We want people to experience, wonderful art.
And it's going to help finish this building, which, you know, I've been in this building a lot. And it's going to finally finish this building, this wonderful building that is a very important building in the city of New York. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Jefferson?
So this is truly an exciting project. I think the dialectic between this adding new materials and the existing space that's beautifully designed brings up a lot of interesting design issues. For me, I think the space is dominant, and the back vault, when they put it in, became the dominant element of that space. And what has happened is that once you added the top piece to that, you made it even more dominant. You made it kind of overwhelming. And in my question before, I was trying to say, why did it have to be so modern, so simply modern sheetrock, plain sheetrock, rather than a kind of a sophisticated, Swedish approach to modernism, softer. But I think the mistake was just adding that piece to it. I think if you kept it or lowered it, the space would be much more harmonious. And the space is the dominant thing, and you should keep that as your primary element, and then everything is subordinate to that. So for example, this image, the one that you have the axial picture at the back of the wall, is truly beautiful. It's almost classical in its placement. And then you look at the sheetrock that you have on top of the bank vault, and it's distracting. It doesn't add anything, particularly in this axial view. So give that some thought. And then the gray floor. Oh, I wish you would select a color that was gray. I understand it artistically, but it becomes another element in this space that takes away from it. You know, it just removes the, kind of pulls it apart too much. In terms of so that's my criticism of the main space, which I think is if it was resolved, it could be beautiful. And I think the adding of phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, we have seen that done before in European places. And it just adds, the artist comes in and they bring their interpretation to the space and make it exciting. Not, you know, the architecture is there, the artists come in and bring their magic to it. And that's beautiful. I love to see that. In terms of replacement windows and doors, it's all a matter of working with the staff to see what the taste level, the sophistication of material. Signage, the same thing. The interior partitions I talk about, yeah, and space. So the buildings of the saying that you have a height limit to the top of the Capitol, I want the artists to be able to do what they do best, and not, you know, this is a space and they can come in and see atoms. They can visualize what would be there. Let them decide. But you know, the space itself, the back vault, and the floor covering.
All right. Thank you very much. Commissioner Master, I believe you've been there as well. Right?
Yes. And thank you. Yesterday, we had such a wonderful tour. It's a beautiful building, and the bank vault room is just stunning. I mean, I think you have to experience it to really appreciate what they're doing. I just want to make that general comment that this space has been vacant for 7 years, and that a lot of potential tenants had looked through the space but weren't able to make it work. So we are incredibly lucky to have somebody like Jack come in and fall in love with the space and put the care and I think passion that is evident in this presentation. So I want to thank you for coming in and working so hard to preserve the architecture. I can't imagine a better adaptive reuse for the space. As Jeannie said, it's really going to attract people and bring people into this space and reactivate this beautiful space. And I am so excited. I wholeheartedly support this proposal because I feel that the applicant has worked so hard in integrating and preserving a lot of the features and making it, basically doing the minimum to make it possible for them to use the space. I know how challenging it is because when you walk into the space, there really are not blank walls to display art. So I admire you for taking on this challenge. I can't believe that you undertook this. So in terms of the elements, let me go through. And I also want to say that a lot of the things that you're doing are reversible. So I don't have a problem with a lot of what you're doing. In terms of the windows, the film, I think is fine. The shades are fine. Your office pergolas with the very creative glass, I think is a wonderful element. And I think that's a great solution to the mezzanine level. Enlarging the door, connecting to the main gallery is fine and necessary. The marble stair railings painted white, I actually think it's fine. And I think that the reason I find it fine is that it does highlight the other railing, which I think is in bronze. And I think that's what the intent was. The door opening to the banking hall, executive offices is necessary. And then the bank vault, I think this is what a lot of folks were talking about. And right now, because the room is empty, I think the bank vault really stands out, and then the wall looks like it's a little bit troublesome. But for me, I find that this is probably necessary because they need this room. In addition, once you have a lot of the other elements and a lot of the artwork showing, I don't think it's going to stick out as much as it does right now. Right now, our eye focuses towards it, but I think it's a necessary element for them not only to have that meeting room, but also maybe as additional space to showcase artwork. So I'm fine with that. And my understanding also is that in the past, in 2014, we had approved for the bank vault doors to be removed. And because of that, I think we can probably leave one intact and then maybe cover over the other. Let's see. The flooring, I think, is fine. As Jeannie had said, I think that you're looking for a neutral tone in order to probably showcase the artwork. And let's see, the storage bay under the stairs for the scissor lift is fine. The ceilings, I think the lighting was very well thought out, the different elements. I'm fine with all the lighting, including the pendants. The linoleum in the mezzanine is fine. The Broadway door is okay. And finally, in terms of the tier 1, tier 2 systems, I think that's a very important element in this in order to save time for you guys and for us and to allow you some creative flexibility.
Thank you very much. Okay, Commissioner Chu.
Thank you. I'm going to try to not go over everything because I agree with a lot of my fellow commissioners. I'm going to hit the points that I wanted to highlight. Like my fellow commissioners, I think this is a great project, and I actually think that the proposal overall is pretty minimal touch. The reason why we're going into very specific details, a few of us, are because it's well documented and because we are able to understand it to the point where we can get to that, which is not always the case. So compliments to you on that. The biggest topic I just wanted to give my reading on is the mezzanine space. Now, I think that I do agree with Michael on the fact that the space always had this intrusion, and that was a part of the room, and it was always a very prominent part of the room. I think that what I would say is that I could accept this, but I do think that there are some things that need to be explored. Number one is the volumetric impact of the second floor space. To me, a gallery wall, as you will undoubtedly start to put into this main space, are partitions to display work, and that's expected. And I think that's a part of what will be very interesting and changing about the space, and exciting to go and see new shows too. I think that that upper floor could be in that family. I think along with some adjustments that I would ask you work with staff on in terms of its relationship to the edges, I think that some of my fellow commissioners mentioned stepping it back a little bit so it's not confused with the vault below it. And also when I look at it from the side, this is, you don't always look at it head on. You're going to be looking at it, from every side. If there are a way for you to look at that volume instead of returning those walls straight back into the window base, which is a part of what my reaction is, if it could be more of the wall and somehow treat those returns in a way that's less intrusive to the space in its fabric, I think that something could be worked out there. And also I would like it to be divorced from the lower floor. In other words, that vertical wall that's blocking the vault door. I think as it sits upstairs, if it lives upstairs, it's workable because it's a part of the family of your partitions and pavilions. Other points, I don't totally understand all the details yet in the lighting of the ceiling, but it does seem to be that the approach is one where there's architectural lighting that's desired and they're being addressed maybe with those pendants. And then there's all the technical flexibility that you need in this space, which is, I think, hovering slightly lower on a grid that has adjustable lighting fixtures on it. Again, with that, I would just say, let's try to give some space between the historic ceiling and that grid. Then in that case, again, if that's distinguishable, it's been done before. I've done it myself. I think it's acceptable. We can work with that. I also really like Michael's comment about color because that's something that I kept thinking as well. The white, and again, some of this is the renderings, and we're affected by renderings a lot. These are renderings, but I would just ask that you maybe think a little bit about subtle differences. And the reason I say that is because sometimes in these renderings, the new elements, which are very stark white, are coming forward and taking more prominence than historic fabric. And I think because there's going to be a lot of stuff there, and at the end of the day, the art's going to capture our eyes. The great art that you guys are going to have, colors, textures, all that will come into play. I'm not worried about the simplicity and the plainness. In fact, it's better this way. Otherwise, it'll compete with the artwork. But I do think that there could be an approach that just says, this is what we're calling the new elements, and just give it a slight shade down, maybe hit it down a little bit. Will give a viewer and a visitor an immediate instinctive understanding of the dialogue and what's historic and what's you're constantly changing inside. Very small thing that could be done, but I think could have a huge impact to the success of the space. I love the fact that you're trying to keep as much natural daylight in here as possible, because that's really what this space is about, all those windows. I don't like permanently blocking out a window for a sculpture bay, so I would like you to think about that. The stain on the wood floor, I agree with Michael, seems to just not be working that well with the warmer center run there. I just think maybe work with staff a little bit on balancing the colors, and maybe you downtone the pigment, the light pigment in that stain, so that some of the warmth can still be there. I also think that there's something about the ceiling to floor relationship in this space that's nice. I'd say maybe work a little bit with staff on the fan coil units. I couldn't really tell what they seemed kind of off the shelf. Considering the way your passion is about everything, I'm doubtful that that's in fact the case. but I think that there needs to be some approach to these elements that are very visible and sitting out in the middle of the space, in the middle of the window base. And lastly, I will say that I would like you to work with staff on the signage. I think the one thing I noticed, I don't mind the signage on the exterior it per se in itself, but and the fact that you returned a corner, I don't necessarily mind that, but I think the thing I was sensitive to is how close it was to the 346 Broadway address, which is right on that corner, and it almost quasi touches it, and that's just something. Maybe you don't do the return. It just feels like they're clashing a little bit. That's it.
All right, thank you very much. Vice Chair Bland?
What's exciting to me about this application is it seems like something we might see in France or Italy, where the embracing of a historic space with new elements is done with great verve. In other words, the new and the old talk to each other. The new is not so recessive that it fades away, as I think we often around this table and even in America want preservation to do. So to me, this is a very exciting sort of thing where there's a dialogue with the new and the old. It's also important that it's so reversible, because if anything is wrong or it needs to change over time, it is reversible. So that's an important caveat. As we know and say all the time, adaptive reuse allows and requires us to have a more lenient attitude, and I accept that wholeheartedly here, and I think that's what you've done. At this long, extensive series of comments by others, I don't need to go through the pieces one by one, and I won't, except for the ceiling. To me, the ceiling is the dominant element that you see, the ceiling and the capitals. And to me, I think the lighting is just overly, I don't know if it's overly complex. You need all of that flexibility in the various types. So maybe it's just too visible. If it can become less visible somehow, I think that would allow the ceiling to dominate as it should in this space. Otherwise, I think I've maybe said enough, and others have said so many good things that I don't need to glom onto it all.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. And Commissioner Chen.
It's a good thing to go last because everything has been said almost. First of all, I echo many of the comments, including the community board and the testimony as well, is that this is exciting. This is really exciting to see not only a good adaptive reuse, but also not just activation on the exterior, but also activation on the interior. Finally get to see a very quiet street, that a public space that deserves view from the inside to be taken seriously. And also, more importantly, almost everything here is reversible, which is a key point that has been pointed out. I think I agree with a lot of comments about the color and the thing, and Vice Chair basically Fred Bland basically took out my main observation, which is because the space is so empty, like most of these halls, and we get spoiled by looking at it, thinking that this should elevate. So as a result, when this is done, the most remaining place that's left is the ceiling. And the ceiling does require work at this moment, which is that, as been pointed out, either by painted the track darker so that it can fade into the background rather than popping it out, and because it really calls attention to the addition to the plane, because when it's all said and done, that's the most viewable area in my mind, because of thing. And so I won't belabor the point about, I agree with many of the commissioners' comment about, it will be in the details, the granular about the joinery, the review, the return, the height, the texture, even the shades of color thing. But I think that we're in good hands, and I think look forward to an exciting project.
Okay, great. Thank you all for your very thoughtful comments. And this, this was a long presentation, and it needed to be, and it was a long set of comments, which also were important. As I said, these are all interior landmarks. They're very special. And this is an exciting opportunity for this landmark. I'm really excited and looking forward to seeing you being able to occupy this space and seeing the dialogue between art and architecture and old and new. And I think that everyone around the table has embraced your approach and welcomes you to the space. But I think we do have some specific, refinements that we would suggest with respect to some of the details and the finishes, the relationships between some of the partitions and the architectural features, and in terms of height, placement, and finish, and thinking about sort of those colors holistically and how to work with the most dominant historic features. And I really do think that we are talking about tweaks to the approach that you've devised here. And so hopefully we'll be able to work with you, the staff. Leanne can continue to work with you to help you work through all of the comments that we've heard. And hopefully we'll be able to see you back very soon with some of those refinements and get you on your way. So thanks so much. And we won't take an action today, and we'll move to the next item.
All right, we're now going to move to the public meeting agenda for a couple of items. First is public meeting item number 1, LPC 22-06302. This is an application for certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Manhattan, block 632, lot 30. 131 Charles Street, the 131 Charles Street house individual landmark. This is a federal style row house built in 1834 with a back house. The application is to construct a dormer and rear yard addition, alter facades, eliminate a passageway, and excavate the cellar and rear yard. This was last presented at the public meeting of August 15th, 2023. No action was taken at that time. I think the staff will do a brief intro before turning it over to the applicants. So we'll need to open the proceedings.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Winnie Chow, Preservation Staff. This item is 131 Charles Street, an individual landmark located in the north side of Charles Street between Greenwich Street and Washington Street. The application is to construct a dormer and a rear yard addition, alter facades, eliminate a horsewalk passageway, and excavate the cellar and rear yard. This item was previously presented 3 times, and at the last public meeting, the majority of commissioners were supportive of how the proposed work has evolved, including the current proposal for modifications to the existing horsewalk opening, the presence of the proposed studio window style dormer at the rear slope of the main house, the proposed 1-story rear yard addition at the rear of the main house, modifications to the openings at the rear facade of the main house and the front facade of the back house, and excavation work at the courtyard. This item was last heard on October 17, 2023, and the commissioners present continue to express concerns with regards to the overall amount of excavation proposed under the site and the size of the dormer. In response, the applicants have reduced the amount of excavation proposed below the back house and reduced the size of the shed dormer, and are here to walk through their presentation and answer any questions. Thank you.
And we'll need to open up the proceedings. Commissioner Bland, would you make a motion to open the proceedings? Thank you, Commissioner Master. Would you second that motion?
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, you may begin.
Thank you, Commissioners and Landmark staff. Thank you, Winnie, for that very detailed introduction. I'm going to shorten my own comments because of that. Should I? Guess I'm not going to wait till people come back in the room.
Yeah, I think that's
Okay.
fine. Let's go ahead.
So, hello, Commissioners and Landmark staff. My name is Jackie Pudu-Vallon, JPD Preservation Consulting. I'm here today with the architects, Wayne Tourette and James Sasakorn of the Tourette Collaborative, and with Valerie Campbell of Kramer Levin. As Winnie stated, you previously saw this application at the public hearing and meeting of January 10th, 2023, and the public meetings of August 15th, and October 17th, 2023. Again, at that public meeting, commissioners asked us to further scale back the amount of excavation on the site and to narrow the width of a proposed dormer at the roof. Here are existing condition photographs to refresh your memory what these buildings look like. On the right is the front facade of the building. In the middle is the rear facade, and on the end is the front facade of the stable building. At the last public meeting, the majority of commissioners voiced support for the proposal to enclose most of the horse walk passage to incorporate its space into the interior of the house, except for a 6-foot deep area at the front of the building with a false door at its rear and a gate at the front. Also, at the last public meeting, commissioners voiced support for altering the rear facade, including constructing the rear addition, excavating a light well in front of that addition, and the installation of a studio window dormer. However, a few commissioners requested that the dormer be made more narrow, which has been done. The width of the dormer has been reduced by 2 foot 9 inches. And since this application was first presented, the proposed excavation scope of work has been greatly reduced in response to commissioner concerns. At the January 10th hearing, commissioners stipulated that the excavation under the main house be reduced. In response, at the August 15th public meeting, we showed a revised proposal that meets the rules in that the excavation will be no deeper than the existing footings of the main house. On August 15th, commissioners asked that the width of the light well at the rear yard be reduced, and that the depth of excavation at the rest of the site be reduced overall. So in response, at the October 17th public meeting, we showed a light well that is reduced in depth and width, with a reduction in the depth of the excavation overall as well. At our last presentation in October, commissioners requested that the amount of excavation on the lot be further reduced. In response to commissioner concerns, we've dramatically reduced the work of excavation again, so that now there's only a passage proposed underneath the back house to connect it below grade to the proposed subcellar level in the rear yard. In the middle is the previous proposed subcellar plan, and on the right is the current proposed, where you can see just a passage and stair under a portion of the back house. Here's the existing section looking east. The previous proposed section looking east, the 4-foot deep footings of the back house are now noted in red. Here's the current proposed section looking east. And here is the previous proposed section looking west. And here's the current proposed section looking west, where you can see the reduction in excavation under the back house. On the left is the previous proposed rear facade rendering, and on the right is the current proposed, showing the more narrow dormer. Here's the roof plan. Here are the roof plans. In the middle is the previous proposed dormer, and on the right is the current proposed. Unchanged from October 17th is the proposed elevation for the back house, showing the excavation under the rear yard. Here are sections through the back house showing the change in the excavation scope of work. In the middle is the previously proposed excavation at the cellar, and on the right is the current proposed, showing just a passage and a stair underneath the back house. This is a rendering of the back house showing no change between the proposed on October 17th and today. Here are the previous proposed and current proposed axons looking west. The change you can see here is the lack of excavation under the east side of the back house. And here are the proposed and current proposed, previous proposed and current proposed axons looking east. The change you can see here is the limited excavation under the back house and the reduction in the width of the dormer on the roof of the main house. So finally, with that, the current proposed renderings, once again, we thank you and we welcome your questions and comments.
All right, thank you very much. Any questions, commissioners? Yes, Commissioner Jefferson.
I have 3 questions. One has to do with the courtyard fabric. Are you keeping the fabric when you excavate, or are you putting in new fabric? That's one.
But I'm sorry, by fabric, do you mean the pavers in there?
The courtyard, you're excavating the courtyard.
Right.
The existing courtyard was there had a certain fabric, right?
It
Material.
It has blue
Are
stone
you
pavers.
you're excavating that? Are you
Yes.
keeping the existing historic material in the places that you're not excavating?
By historic material, do you mean the pavers that are in place in the courtyard? Maybe I should go back to.
Well, go back to the drawing.
Short, the existing.
The original courtyard was flat, right? Had a certain material, brick or something.
Oops, that
Okay.
was it, sorry.
You're excavating it
It's all,
now.
it's all bluestone pavers.
Yeah,
currently.
it has some, it has that asphalt. Are you keeping part of that?
I should ask the architects to answer this, because I'm not sure if the intention.
Wayne, just come up to the front. The question is, are you keeping the, well, A, are those bluestone pavers historic, and B, are you keeping them? We don't. Yeah. I think Valerie told them.
Hi, my name is Wayne Tourette. I'm the architect. I don't believe that the pavers are historic. If they were historic, we would keep them. Okay. Does that answer your
Yeah,
question?
they look small to be historic. Usually
Understood.
bluestone pavers are larger.
Okay, this
flat.
rear facade, the material on it, you're keeping that rear, the brick as it is now?
Which rear facade are we talking about? The front?
Yes, the brick remains on both buildings, correct?
Remain just the way it is, okay. And thirdly, the horse walk, was it visible back in 1840 that you could see all the way through? Or is it, is that the way it was back? when-
I wasn't there.
Okay, but now, that's,
But,
that's good.
yeah,
Now,
but
now,
a horse
can you
needs to walk
see all the
through there.
way through?
I don't know if it was blocked visually, but a horse needs to walk through it, yes.
So you can see all the way through now, as it exists?
No.
You
Now,
cannot.
yeah, sure.
Hi, Jackie Puduvallen again. So currently there is a solid paneled wood door with a glass window on it, which has a shade behind it so that the public can't look down into the owner's private space. That's for security and for privacy. The historic photos we showed in previous presentations, which I'm sorry we didn't think to include in the appendix today. There was in the earliest photo we found, which was the early 1920s, there was a solid plank door, typical vertical planks with the long strap, hinges on it. In my opinion, that could have dated to the early 19th century. But we don't exactly have documentation
So
other than that.
there was a space, right?
Yes.
And the space had two doors, right? Is the
As far as
space
we-
still there or the space is gone?
The horse walk is still there, and
Okay,
there's
okay.
currently a solid wood door there, and
Okay,
the
so the
earliest-
space is still there now?
Yes,
Thank you, that's all.
thank you.
Yeah. And we've talked about this a lot in previous public meetings on this, and there have been a number of thoughts about it. We've also talked a lot about our previous commission actions at similar buildings. And so, we've got a sort of a mixed history where we have approved filling in horse walks or putting in doors to recall their presence. And so at the last public meeting, we did have, and I think you were not here at our last public meeting, but otherwise we had a majority of commissioners who supported the approach, which is to have a gate that allows you to see 6 feet back so that you have a perception of the space. And then at the back, there's a door to also recall the presence of the horse walk, and the rest is filled in. Okay, any other questions? All right, so as we just heard and as was presented the last time we saw this, and we've seen this several times. I think this is the 4th time we're looking at this. And with each iteration, I think this has been scaled back significantly in terms of the amount of excavation. After the first version, the excavation was reduced under the main house. In the second version, it was reduced in the courtyard. And now in this version we're looking at today, it's eliminated except for one connection under the back house. So that has continued to get reduced in response to our comments. And over time, the dormer has been something that we've also looked at. It started out as 2 dormers and a shed dormer, which didn't seem quite successful. And the last time it was presented as sort of a studio window on the rear facade. And I think most people were comfortable with it, but we did hear a couple of people suggest that it be reduced in width, and which they've done today. So I'm going to sort of pick up where we left off at the last public meeting and start with those of you who were in support of the project as was presented, and then with the concerns layered on, I will move around. So Commissioner Ginsburg, I think you were comfortable with this the last time we saw it. Yeah.
I think they've improved it and I'm still comfortable with it and feel it's appropriate.
Okay. And Commissioner Chu, you were also comfortable with most aspects of it, but you specifically asked that the dormer
Right.
be
And
reduced.
And I appreciate the fact that they've revised it. They've brought them in. I think everything they've done in eliminating all that excavation, I think this is good.
Okay, great. And Commissioner Master, you also were in support the last time we saw this.
And I think it's appropriate, yeah.
Okay, great. And then Vice Chair Bland, you supported all components of it, but we're very concerned about the continued excavation. Ask them to reduce it.
But I'm concerned no longer. I think what they've done is great and I support it now.
Okay, great. Commissioner Lutfi, you also had concerns about the excavation.
Yeah, and I also appreciate what they did with the dormer.
Okay, great. Great. And Commissioner Chen, I think you had some thoughts originally about the horse walk being an appropriate approach, but wondered if there could be a better way to integrate it, I think. But otherwise, I think you sort of agreed with all of the other commissioners.
That's correct.
Okay. And Commissioner Goldblum, you had a different opinion. I think you, I'm not sure you actually commented as much on the excavation, but you had asked that the studio window be narrowed in width, and then asked them to explore integrating the horse walk into the space with keeping some of the party wall, which they have not done, but.
I think that the excavation was not my issue. House is better, dormers better, but my concern is horse walking.
Okay, all right. And I do also, before we wrap this up, I just want to note that we did get 3 letters, which was shared with you all in advance of today from HDC, Village Preservation, and 1 individual, and recommending denial. So those have been received and shared with the commissioners in advance. But I think where we are today is after. Yeah.
Want to get Everardo's
Oh
comments?
my goodness, Everardo, I was going from my list of people who were here. Sorry, please go ahead.
I went over this last night, and I was concerned about the horse walk, but since you mentioned that it was already, and nothing can be seen from the front facade, I find this appropriate.
Okay. All right, so I think we do have enough to support it now at this 4th try, and I do want to thank the applicants for your listening to us. I want to thank the commissioners for your comments. I think all of these iterations have scaled this project back in a way that really respects this individual landmark. So we'll go ahead and make a motion. Commissioner Master, would you go ahead and make that motion?
Sure. In the matter of LPC 22-06302, 131 Charles Street, individual landmark, a federal-style row house built in 1834 with a back house. Application is to construct a dormer and rear yard addition, alter facades, eliminate a passageway, and excavate the cellar and rear yard. I note that the building is an individual landmark and that building style, scale, materials, and details are among the features that contribute to the special architectural and historic character of the Greenwich Village Historic District Extension. I also note that the back house was occupied by the noted photographer Diane Arbus from 1959 to 1967. I recommend approval, finding that the work at the rear facade of the main house, the rear yard, and the back house will not be visible from any public thoroughfare, that the proposed studio window-style dormer at the rear slope of the roof of the main house is in keeping with the types of changes that occurred to roof lines over time on buildings of this age and style, that the installation of the new dormer will not eliminate any significant historic fabric, and the outer edges of the original roof slope will be retained, thereby maintaining the distinctive pitched roofline characteristic of federal-style houses. That the modified openings will maintain the general scale and pattern of existing openings at the rear facade, and the historic attic floor window openings will be maintained. That the proposed one-story rear yard addition is modest in scale and will not overwhelm the house or the courtyard between the house and the back house, and will be simply designed and feature typical cladding, profiles, and finishes. That the horse walk openings to feature an open iron gate at the front that looks into a 5-foot deep vestibule and a plank door at the rear with a pathway at the rear that corresponds to the grade of the sidewalk will maintain the visual presence of a horse walk. That the multi-light windows and doors at the front facade of the back house will be in keeping with fenestration typically found in buildings of this age and type, and their proportions and placement will recall certain aspects of the design found in a historic drawing of the facade. That the changes to the courtyard will maintain the approximate historic grade in the area in front of the back house, and along with the pathway connecting it to the former horse walk will relate to the historic courtyard even with a below-grade light well. And that the excavation and underpinnings will be set back almost entirely from the main house and will primarily occur under the courtyard and a small portion of the back house, and will be done in compliance with Department of Building regulations under the supervision of a licensed professional engineer.
Thank you. And Commissioner Ginsburg, would you second that motion?
Second.
All right, thank you. Mark, will you call the vote?
Chair Carroll,
Aye.
Commissioner Bland, Commissioner Chen,
Aye.
Commissioner Chu,
Aye.
Commissioner Ginsburg,
Aye.
Commissioner Goldblum. Nope. Commissioner Jefferson,
Aye.
Commissioner Lutfi, Commissioner Master.
Aye.
With 8 in favor and 1 opposed, the motion passes.
All right, that's approved. Thank you. All right, we are going to break for lunch now. It's 1 o'clock. We will resume at 1:30. We are about an hour behind schedule, so we'll come back right at 1:30 and pick up with public meeting item number 2 and then move to our public hearing agenda. We'll ask all members of the public to voluntarily exit the Zoom meeting at this time so that you do not have technical difficulties should you wish to return at 1:30.